Say a word of prayer before we begin. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the beautiful day that you created for us today. We're thankful that each one of us are here and alive today through the grace of God. We ask that you would send your Holy Spirit to you. Please be with Carin as she presents. And may everything that we do glorify your name. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I'm going to bring these up. I'm going to bring them up front, too. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see some of you back again. We appreciate you coming, and I hope you've been learning something these last few evenings or afternoon yesterday. Is there anybody here who's brand new? Oh, welcome, welcome. We've had a couple natural health series since Friday, and so Friday was the building your immune system. Yesterday we did, what did we do? Oh, natural remedies that we can do at home. And then today we're tying it up with cooking class with healthy nutrition. So welcome. What is your name?
Sharon.
Sharon, good to meet you, Sharon. And so I want to let you know that our class today is not just teaching you how to cook, because I know everybody here can put something together on their own. None of us are starving, right? So we've made it this far. So we can get, no, don't say you're starving back there. I know you're not. Okay. First of all, I also know that your wife is an excellent cook, so there you go. But anyway, but the reason why I want to let you know that today is going to be not only teaching you simple, nutritious, and delicious recipes, but it's also going to be an education, because I think we need to learn why we make changes to have better health, and what are the things that we're doing that what we should do, better things we can do, and other things we can maybe not do. Right? So I kind of want this to be an education for you, not just simply showing you how to cook, because I think you all know how to cook. But the best part of today, samples. You get to try everything we make today, and that's always a bonus, right? And so without further ado, I'd like to ask the Lord to be with us as well. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some resources that I have that go along with the seminars that we've been doing. And they're available today. We didn't have them available the other days, but they are available today. And then we'll get right into our program, okay? So why don't we just bow our heads again. Heavenly Father, thank you again, Lord, for our opportunity to be here in Denton. And Lord, we appreciate our friends here and our new friends that have come. And we ask you, Lord, to please just bless our time together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so yesterday we did let's go talk about Friday. Friday we talked about immune system building. And I have a book here. A friend of mine is a physician who wrote a book. It's called The Pandemic Busters, a prepper's handbook. It's 22 simple and easy immune boosters you can do at home. What I love about this book is look how simple it is. It's one of those, it's almost like a cartoon, like a comic book. Remember when comic books, people used to get them? But I like it because it's just simply laid out and nice and easy. You're welcome to take a look at these. So this goes along with our Friday seminar. Yesterday, we did natural remedies. We did home natural remedies that you can do at home to not only help fight illness. We did a cough syrup. We did a natural penicillin. We also did a burn cream and a pain salve, right? So those were the ones we did yesterday. I have a book here called God's Pharmacy, farm with an F-A-R instead of a P-H, right? And it is using natural things to be able to, help us, recover or actually prevent when other people are sick and we don't want to be sick, right? So you feel free to take a look at this one. We have this. And then also we talked a little bit about charcoal yesterday. Charcoal as activated charcoal. If you weren't there yesterday, activated charcoal is a substance made from, burning. It's really black carbon is what it is. But what it does is it has a great, amazing effect for us, whether it's detoxification, it's a poison antidote, and it really is for what ails you, whether it's, whether you have just sickness or you have a mosquito bite, it really helps. This book here has tons and tons of information on how to use charcoal in a lot of different types of scenarios. You can actually purchase charcoal on Amazon, maybe some health food stores or not health food stores, but maybe supplement shops probably have activated charcoal, but I know for a fact that they have it on Amazon. So take a look at that. And then the one that's going along with today, well, there's two books that go along with today. The first one is Fighting Disease with Food. I love this book because this book you can just kind of look up here. I'm just pulled it up and it says gastritis. case, maybe you know somebody who has gastritis. So it's got all different kinds of health issues, but what it does is it lays out in a nice chart form the type of foods that are helpful for gastritis, the health benefit, why each food is helpful, how to use it, which is pretty important. Sometimes you learn like, oh yeah, papayas are great for gastritis. But all right, do I eat papaya seed? Do I eat papaya? Is it green? Is it ripened? You don't know, right? This tells you how to use it. And then it also gives the composition based on 1 cup of what you were eating. So you'll know the calories and the carbohydrates and fats like that. So some people, especially when they might be on a diet, maybe if they whether have diabetes or some kind of restrictive diet, you might need to know those things. So that's it. So this is a nice easy book as well. So see, this is saving me from answering all the questions there when I'm sitting at the table and if you have questions. Now I can just tell you about them. Lastly, the book that I would like to share. Well, I love this book, and the reason why I love this book is because I know the author, okay? That is why. And, well, I'm actually the author, so that's why I like this one so much. But this is the cookbook I wrote just a couple years ago called Plant-Based Made Simple. It's about 98 recipes with full color pictures. And I like to kind of share with you about the cookbook. I put this together and I wanted I wanted a full color picture. Don't you want to see what it's supposed to look like? And sometimes it doesn't look exactly like because everybody puts their own nuances in things, right? But I thought that it was important to put the pictures in there. So I had a great team of people in a media team that helped me with all my editing and my stuff like that. But let me just tell you a little bit about the cookbook so that you can understand when you go home, if you decide to get one, how it works. Well, first I have a chapter in here. The first chapter is called Hold That Spatula. Hold that spatula is need to knows before you start cooking. You may find an ingredient here that you've never used before because when we're transitioning to a more plant-based diet, we like to substitute things to make kind of have recipes resonate with things that we're used to, right? If we're making a macaroni and cheese, but we're not using cheese, we still want it to taste cheesy, don't we? It's not macaroni and nothing, right? So there are things that we can use that can resonate with our taste buds to make things taste like cheese. So that's just an example. There might be a technique like dextrinizing. Does anybody know what dextrinizing is? I know Liz does. Does anybody else know what dextrinizing is? Dextrinizing is actually taking a whole grain and toasting it in like a pan, and you can almost kind of browning it to where kind of like where the outside of the grain itself will actually pop a little bit with the bran on there. Dextrinizing actually helps whole grains like brown rice and things like that cook faster, cook fluffier, because some people don't like they change their diet and they're used to white rice. Now they're eating brown rice and like, this is chewy, it doesn't taste that good. But actually when you do a little technique like that, you get nice fluffy rice, you get it cooks quicker, and on top of it, it makes it easy to digest just by doing that little bit of toasting. And so something like that. So you might see in the recipe where I'll say a cup of dextrinized rice. So now you'll know, you just go right to the front of the book and I'll be explaining that for you. So that's important. I think that was a good thing and it kind of tells it. Now, I'll turn here for a second. All right, so I told you that we're doing this recipe today. So we will have this recipe, but every recipe, like I said, has a full color picture, as well as many of them have something called chef tips. I put a little note in there, maybe something I've changed in the recipe, or you can change, like, oh, if you like this, you can try this, or maybe a little backstory on how I developed the recipe, or just a little hint on the cooking process. Every recipe actually has, not only the servings, how many servings it's going to make, but it has a couple of things. Some people have dietary restrictions. So I took the 4 that I thought were the most popular issues that people had with dietary things, such as gluten-free. Some people are soy-free. Some people have nut allergies, so they're nut-free. And then some people actually like to take oil out of their diet. We could talk about that in a little while, but when we're talking about more whole foods, oil is actually considered a refined food. So some people want oil-free. I've given a lot of oil-free options, or some of the recipes happen to already be oil-free. So I've noted that for people who have some dietary restrictions. And also, and like I said, sometimes I put like an option. It might be soy-free option, meaning if we're instead of using tofu, you could use this, and so something like that. And I've also put in, are you familiar with QR codes? These little square boxes, have you ever seen these before? The QR code. Basically, if you have a cell phone, you can take your cell phone, put it on picture mode, like you're taking a picture. All you have to do is put it up to this little box here, and boom, a little message will come up and say, do you want to go to this website? If you click on that website, guess what? You get me in your kitchen. Isn't that nice? So after you leave, because we come as friends, but we leave as family. That's how I like to say it. You may say, I miss Carin. She's so nice. You probably don't miss Ron, but you miss Carin, right? By the way, Ron, my husband's in the kitchen. If you didn't hear, I don't know if you heard that or not. But anyway, if you wanted to have some, be like, I want to see Carin do the recipe. I will walk you right through the recipe. So I'll do it right in your kitchen. So, and then of course, like I said, if you miss me, you can just watch them every once in a while just to reminisce a little bit, right? Now, my favorite part of this whole cookbook, favorite part, I had to meet a deadline. And, it's hard when you got to get something to the printer because they only have so much time to do all the processing that they need to print the book. And we were just about to hit the deadline, and they gave me the manuscript, and I looked at it, and I said it was unacceptable. Can you imagine? And they were like, what? I'm like, and nothing against you guys, and I see there's a lot of gentlemen here, so there's nothing against. But I had an idea in my head, and unfortunately it didn't convey to the person who was doing my layout. You see, he put everything together, it looked really nice, except every title on the different chapters were all the same color. And I said, no. You see, I want all my titles to color coordinate with my pictures. You see, I thought that was very special, important. That was very important to me. He was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I want it to match the picture. And he goes, great, you can do it. I'm like, what? It's like, you can. So me and the editor sat there all day color coordinating everything. So there was a lot of love put in this book. Also, you'll see that I put a subtitle on all my recipes, like corn and oat waffles. You'll love them a waffle lot, right? See, because you see, I have a little bit of a quirky personality, and so again, I wanted this to represent me. And so they actually did an excellent job. I'm so thankful for the team that worked with me in putting this together. This was really a labor of love. But anyway, so take a look at it. I hope if you're interested in it, I'll happily personalize it for you and put a little note in there for you. So, all right, that's like my little commercial. We'll put these back. I actually have a good friend here. Yesterday we were talking about natural remedies and herbs and things that can help boost the immune system and help fight disease. I'm going to ask Sheila just to come up briefly and just talk a little bit about some of the things that I had her come and bring because she's an herbalist. So go ahead, please, Sheila.
Okay, everybody can hear me. Do you need me to, Mike?
You want me to give her this? We are actually live streaming, so that's why we're passing this along. Ta-da. Hold that. There you go.
Oh, no.
That won't help you here, but it will help them here. So.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I just want to talk briefly about what I've brought. And so over here I have extracts. They're extracts instead of tinctures because they're made with glycerin instead of alcohol. And so they taste better. And they are healthier for you. And so we have some lungwort here that is good for, it is actually can regenerate lung tissue. So like if you've ever had, like if you smoked a lot and you quit smoking or anything, or if you've had some type of, like for me, I have asthma just like Carin. So it's really good for asthmatics to build up their lungs. And then we have,
Wait.
yes.
By the way, you can tell I'm much better today. I've been taking my lungwort. I've been taking also nettle.
She's also been taking the nettle. And so we have cayenne pepper. Let me tell you a little bit about, I know that we talked about cayenne pepper a little bit yesterday, but as an extract, this is, if somebody is having a heart attack and their conscience, right?
Conscious, yes,
we do not want anybody unconscious being given anything, right? Because they could choke and be in a worse condition than they already are in. But if they are conscious and they're feeling like they're having a heart attack, you can actually take about 6 dropperfuls and put it underneath their tongue and have them swallow it, and it will actually stop their heart attack and save them. They still need to seek medical care, but whenever they go in, there are so many people that have had their life saved from just taking this cayenne pepper, and by the time they get there, they don't have to take the nitroglycerin. So then we also have elderberry, which would go along with our first presentation as far as the immune system. It builds our immune system. And this is actually an elderberry blend that I actually put in here ginger root and echinacea. Echinacea is also a immune booster. And then I have red clover. Red clover is a blood purifier, so it will purify the blood. I also have a hair support blend, so if you know anybody that had COVID and they're having hair loss, this will help regain the lost hair that they have. I have a sleep aid formula here that is good for, it is really good if somebody is not getting the quality of sleep whenever they fall asleep and they wake up in the middle of the night and they can't get back to sleep. It actually has oat straw in it. And oat straw is a herb that will keep you asleep longer. So, but it also has other herbs in it as well that will actually help you fall asleep as well. And then oat straw. Oat straw is good for exhausted nerves. So like and it's also, as I said, good to get you to sleep longer. And then we have the nutritive tonic. So this is very important for especially women because it will balance out your hormones and it will help you get back on track, especially if you're having any issues with your iron levels. And then we have dandelion root, which is really good for liver rejuvenation. And then as Miss Darcy here, who is our diabetic, what would we call you? Expert. There you go. She actually had a seminar here not too long ago on diabetes, and she was coming up here, was excited about it because she said this can actually lower your blood sugar. So, and then we have kidney stone breaker. It has cankerpedra in it and kava kava root, which will break down kidney stones, but it will also prevent them. So if you know anybody that has kidney stones regularly, my husband actually takes it because he has kidney stones almost at least twice or 3 times a year. And since he's been taking that, he doesn't have them anymore. And I know Kenneth had an experience not too long ago where he had kidney stones and he took the cankerpedra and it broke it up. And then we have lion's mane. Lion's mane is wonderful, but it is also known to rejuvenate our nerves. So like if you've lost any nerval and you have nerve damage, it will actually bring back your nerves. And so that is the extracts. And then I also brought some essential oils, especially since we were talking about them. There's peppermint oil up here. There's eucalyptus, which we used yesterday for cough syrups, and peppermint's really good to open up your nasal. And then there's also others up here that if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them when you guys come back here. So right. I really look forward to it. Thank you.
And all of these things will be available after, so you're welcome to peruse the table, right? Who doesn't love to shop, right? And we brought the shopping to you. So anyway, thank you.
Pass this back.
All right, we'll get this back on here. There we go. All right, so without further ado, we are going to get started. How's that? We're going to talk a little bit, well, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself so that you know where I'm coming from and the information that I am giving you. I have a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University's Center for Nutritional Studies. So I've studied plant-based nutrition, and as well as my husband and I are both graduates of medical missionary work at an institute called Wildwood Health Institute. And so we graduated many years ago, and we now take the study of medical missionary work, being able to use natural health wherever we go all over the world to help people where they are, So that's what, basically in a nutshell, we want to meet the needs of what the issues are for the people. I also am trained at the Ruby International Culinary Arts School, and I graduated in a program called Forks Over Knives. Have you ever heard of Forks Over Knives? It was a documentary many, many years ago, maybe like 15 years ago, something. Not that many, well, that's pretty many for some of the young people here, but many years ago. And they had a specific program that highlighted a whole food, plant-based cooking. And so if you didn't see that documentary, it's an excellent documentary. Even though it's older, the information is timeless, because when you have something like that, it'll transcend no matter what. I can tell you that I haven't heard anything new. There's nothing new under the sun, right? So for what he said in that documentary, I haven't seen anything that has been updated in it. So that's great. So that tells a little bit about me. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. And I think Ron, my husband, may have brought this up. He did a mini seminar yesterday morning. But we're talking about nutrition today. And let's talk a little bit about disease. Because you see, obviously the focus is for people to feel good, right? Nobody wants to feel sick. Nobody wants to suffer, right? So it's interesting because 94 to 96% of all disease. Now, when I talk about disease, I'm talking about inflammation in the body, like we've mentioned in our other seminars. But 94 to 96% of all disease, whether it's a common cold, all the way to something as serious as like stage 4 cancer, is lifestyle disease. Meaning that it's our lifestyle that causes the disease, not necessarily our genetics. Now, you're saying, oh, Carin, come on now, 96%? Well, it's interesting. That 4 to 6% that we're talking about, that's actual genetics, are things where, you may have been born with a certain problem. A good example would be, I was born with a genetic problem to my hip that I didn't really know about until I got a little older and I started having problems with my hip. It came to find out that I actually have a prosthetic hip into my leg here, and the reason why is because one of my hips was a little smaller than the other. So being active, a young person, all that, I wore out all the cartilage in this hip. All my other joints are perfect. In fact, I know that because I fell down the stairs about a year ago, and I had to go because I had like multiple sprains in this leg here, and in this foot, ankle, foot, leg, right? But they checked all and they're like, wow, you have great joints. I'm like, well, except this one wore right out, but it was the only bad one. So that was a genetic problem. I couldn't have prevented this eventually having a problem, right? But most of the time, disease sometimes has something called a genetic propensity. A genetic propensity means that there might be a mutation in your genetic code that might have been hereditary maybe, and it makes you susceptible. It doesn't mean that you're going to get that disease. But you see, I'd like to look at it like this. If your genes are a gun, now let me ask you a question. Are guns dangerous? No. No. You said yes, you said no. The answer is no. The gun is not dangerous unless you do what? Shoot it. Yep, pull the trigger, right? So if your genes are a gun, your lifestyle is what pulls the trigger. What you do, what you don't do, what you eat, what you don't eat. These are all the things that actually are the cause of most disease, up to 96%, okay? So let's take type 2 diabetes for an example. Some people have type 2 diabetes. Now, if grandma had type 2 diabetes, and mom had type 2 diabetes, and sister has type 2 diabetes, does that mean that you're going to have type 2 diabetes? No. The answer is no, absolutely. You see, you may have a genetic propensity, but remember, your genes do not give orders. What they do is they make suggestions. They're like, oh, well, if you do this, if you do the same things mom and grandma and your sister are doing, chances are we're going to give you diabetes, okay? However, so lifestyle plays a very significant, important role in us getting diseases or preventing diseases. But listen to this. This is why I'm passionate about what we are doing today. Of that 94 to 96% of all disease, do you realize that 60 to 70% is directly related to what you eat? Can you imagine the statistic on that? So the foods that you eat or don't eat are contributing to your health and any kind of disease or ailments that you may get. So this is why I'm here today, because this is what makes me, passionate about sharing with others. When you learn those statistics, you say, wow, because guess what? We can change our lifestyle and not only prevent disease, but we can reverse disease too. I happen to be the cooking class instructor at a lifestyle center. Lifestyle center is a medical, place where people come for like 11 or 25-day program. I happen to be at our lifestyle center, where they're monitored by physicians, regular doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses, all that. They also have health coaches. But the interesting thing is that these doctors are looking at changing lifestyle, not just medicating you and sending you on your way. You see, they want to reverse the disease, because I'm going to tell you, medication does not reverse disease. Nobody here is taking a medication that's fixing them. What it may do is may help your symptoms or may help regulate something in your body. And sometimes things, trust me, medications are life-saving, so we don't want to say all medication is bad, but it's not natural to the body. But if we can do things in our lifestyle that can prevent or reverse disease, I'm going to tell you, many people come to Lifestyle Center. Diabetes is probably one of the biggest promoters of the Lifestyle Center. People come with diabetes, and sometimes within 11 days they're off all their medications in perfect normal blood sugar range. And that's because we've taught them how to change their lifestyle in 11 days. An endocrinologist will tell you that once a diabetic, always a diabetic. That's because the medicine that they give you isn't fixing your diabetes. It might be stabilizing your blood sugar, right? But it's not fixing the diabetes. In fact, sadly, as you go on, you seem to end up taking more medication, different medications. Oh, now you're on insulin. But to be able to reverse with lifestyle, it is an amazing thing. I know people that have reversed cancer, stage 4 cancer. 2 good friends of mine, both are alive today, that they gave them less than 6 months to live, and they've now lived 12, 13, 14 years cancer-free because of change of lifestyle. And they did a lot of natural things to help that. But they decided they were going to go and say, you know what? I'm going to let God's natural remedies work for me. So I just thought that was an amazing statistic. I also like to talk, before we get started, about the standard American diet. Have you ever heard of the standard American diet? That's pretty good. Most people know that phrase. Well, the standard American diet, interestingly enough, has a very interesting acronym. Standard S, American A, Diet D. What does that spell, folks? SAD. The standard American diet is SAD. And the reason why is because we eat a tremendous amount of fried foods, high fat, high sodium, high sugar, and low fiber. Okay? Our body, we are built to eat mostly fibrous foods, believe it or not. And things like meat and cheese and dairy products and things like that have absolutely no fiber in them. So the American diet is based on a lot of those foods. And so that's why when we see a tremendous amount of disease, especially colon cancer, I bring that one up because I want to give you like a little anatomy lesson. I like to compare the gastrointestinal system of a human being to the gastrointestinal system of a cat. Because you see, I love animals and I have cats. All right, so we'll do the cat. So I have a mouth and my cat has a mouth too. I have an esophagus and my cat has an esophagus. I have a stomach and my cat has a stomach. Now this is where we start differing. Because you see, I have some small intestines where most of my nutrition is being absorbed, okay? And then I'll just finish with us. Then I have the large intestines, or the colon, where all my waste is getting pushed out, right? And then boop, it all goes out and you feel better and you move on with your day, right? Okay, now, the cat, once they get to the stomach, they process their food, and then they have like a long, smooth tube running right out. Because you see, a cat's diet can be up to 95% protein. A cat really does not need to eat any fiber. But you see, we have 30 feet of intestines, right? Not only to absorb all these beautiful nutrition in our small intestines, but then we have to get that stuff out, right? You see, the colon or the large intestines are kind of almost like, not a long, smooth tube. They are kind of, they're kind of, I don't know how you call them, kind of perforated, kind of pushing things out. But they need fiber to push them out. And if we're not eating a high fiber diet of fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, we are not getting things out. Now, what happens? Well, the United States, most people are meat and potatoes kind of people, right? So they're eating their meat, they're eating their starchy potato, but they're not getting a lot of fiber. Well, what happens? Well, the meat and stuff gets caught up in that colon, and it starts to putrefy. And when it putrefies, it causes ulcerations. And these ulcerations become cancer. And that's why we have a tremendous amount of colon cancer in the United States. Oh, but there's good news. Did you know that people who are plant-based have little to no cancer, in the colon? I mean, very rarely. Now, I'm going to tell you, could it happen? It certainly could happen. But it's so rare to see colon cancer in somebody who's a whole food plant-based eater. And so just to understand, this is what I say about nutrition and how it affects our health. You'll see why when you look at statistics like that, like, oh, you could have a 0.1% chance of getting colon cancer, or you could have like a 60% chance of getting colon cancer on the standard American diet. So you can see how tremendous food plays into our lifestyle. All right, I think that's all I want to talk about. I'm like so attention deficit. You guys know I go all over the place, right? Those of you who have seen me in my last couple things, I put those there so I keep myself on track. All right, so we are going to start now with our first recipe. Now, everybody has the recipe, so everything that we're doing here today, you have the recipes. I'm making one change that I noticed when I was preparing. I made a mistake on the recipe. So I will let you know, and actually it's on this recipe. So when we get there, I'll let you know, and you can make a little note if there's some pens or something. If anybody has a pen, you might want to just change that. But we are starting with our corn and oat waffles today. Now, can you smell them? Ooh, Ron's been in the back making corn and oat waffles. Hi, Ron. He's back there diligently working, right? Anyway, so, well, breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And we're going to talk about it why. Well, first of all, the word breakfast should give you a clue. What are you doing when you eat breakfast? You are breaking the fast. It means that you have fasted during your sleeping hours, which is your time that rest and recovery. Remember, we talked about that with immune system building. It's the time where your body recovers and rejuvenates and, ready to go. But you haven't eaten anything, right? So you're ready. Your body should be hungry at breakfast. I'm going to let you know, a lot of times people think, oh, breakfast, I'm never hungry at breakfast. Do you ever have that, like where you don't feel hungry, right? Or how about, it's the easiest one to skip because I'm not hungry in the morning anyway, so I'm trying to lose weight, right? I'm going to skip breakfast. Big no. And the reason why, well, first of all, if you are not hungry at breakfast, now you haven't eaten for a while. If you're not hungry at breakfast, that means you are eating way too late into your sleep time. You see, we should actually make sure that we have about 4 or 5 hours before we actually sleep. Before we actually, we want to finish our last meal at least, 4 hours before you go to bed. So I always like to say, and you've heard this saying before, breakfast like a king, right? Lunch like a queen, and sometimes people say prince. And dinner like a what? A pauper. You see, paupers don't always have money for food. So believe it or not, for best health, most people would do well with only 2 meals a day. Believe it or not. Now, in our country, in our culture, we like to gather together at the dinner table because that's when everybody's home, right? We like to socialize. Well, you know what? if that's something that's important in your family, and then what I would recommend is doing a very light dinner. Very something like maybe a brothy soup and some crackers, or maybe some fruit salad and something like crackers or something, or popcorn. You know, I think that's your best. Now, of course, there's always going to be those times when you're gathering together with family and friends and you want to have a little something else. But for the most part, during your week, or skipping your last meal. It's hard to, you know, some people say, oh, that's too hard to get used to. If you are eating most of your calories at breakfast, because if breakfast like a king means it's the most important, you should be eating most of your calories there. Lunch like a queen, not much less than the king, right? But if you are eating enough on those 2 meals and you're eating quality whole foods, dinner, you won't even really be hungry for dinner. It's more like just breaking a habit than it is that your body is desiring the food. So anyway, so I like to do some breakfast recipes. I'm going to just do a couple today. I'm going to do not only the waffles, but I'm going to do a fruit sauce as well. So that's really breakfast. Oh, you know, I said about skipping breakfast. I want to just mention to you, let's talk a little bit about this for a second. You know, people say, I'm just going to skip breakfast. That's the easiest one to skip. Let's go through the day of somebody who skips breakfast, okay? Now, I'm suggesting you eat your breakfast as your biggest meal, starting with some fresh fruits. I mean, we want to get as fresh as possible. Yesterday, one of my friends asked me, is it better to eat raw vegetables or cooked vegetables, right? Well, it's the same thing with fruits and stuff too. Raw is your best bet because you're getting the most nutrition. Once you start cooking things, the enzymes break down and you start losing nutrition. Now you're still getting some nutrition, but you're not getting as quality of nutrition as you are in the raw foods. So breakfast, you should start with some fresh fruit, have some whole grain cereals or whatever. We're going to do the waffles today, and then round out your meal with the most calories for your day, believe it or not, and that will get you started. But let's go through somebody who skipped breakfast. Okay, I decide that I am skipping breakfast today. Right? I'm going to save calories, by the way. I'm going to skip breakfast. So what do? I get ready, I go to work. What happens at about 9 o'clock?
You head to the snack machine.
Well, they had donuts in the coffee room. So I'm just going to grab a donut because I'm starving now, because guess what? I haven't eaten anything. And so I'll have a cup of coffee too. Isn't that good? We'll talk about caffeine in a little while. All right, and then about noontime, it's lunch. Ding, 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 my bell goes off because you see, I've just now eaten empty calories, right? So I have not given my body, in fact, I've given my body false stimulation. Sugar and caffeine stimulates the nervous system but does not feed the nervous system. So your nervous system now thinks it's getting something nutritious, and then it's like, oh, good, thank you for giving me something. What did you give me? That's not food. Boop. And then that's why you go up with sugar and you go and caffeine, and then what do you go? Boop, you plummet. So what do?
Eat first thing you see.
Yep. And grab another cup of coffee, right? Because you need to get your energy back up. All right, so now it's lunchtime. Well, I'm starving now because guess what? A donut and a cup of coffee was not enough for me. And so now I'm really hungry. You know what? Maddie, when you go out to lunch today, could you go to McDonald's and pick me up a hamburger, French fries, and, get me a chocolate shake, okay? Because you see, I'm just now starving and I need something. Did I just give myself now for lunch anything good? Nothing quality there either. So I eat that up, but guess what happens at 3 o'clock? Because now I've still given myself nothing nutritious. Ding, 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 the bell goes off again and I am hungry. Now I go to the snack machine. Potato chips, let me get a soda and drink that down. So by the time I get home, I now just am looking for anything because my body still has not been sufficiently fed. So why not get pizza, right? Why not, right? And so let me ask you a question. Do you think that I've saved any calories today? Do you think I've gone overboard with my fat and my sugar and my salt and my no fiber? You can see how skipping breakfast, actually people that skip breakfast eat more calories during the day than people who eat a good quality breakfast. So if that was your MO back in the day, erase that thought. You want to eat a good quality breakfast. I promise you. Do you know that people that eat a good, healthy breakfast, like starting with fresh fruits and stuff, live 8 to 10 years longer than people who don't? So eat your breakfast, and we'll start with your waffles, right? All right, so we're going to start, and now we're going to do a recipe. Can you imagine that? I promised you I would, and now I will. All right, we're going to start with the corn and oat waffles, let me grab this here, my recipe here so I can follow along. Now, I'm going to start with, I'm doing a half recipe because we've made some already, so you have some nice fresh waffles. Ron's doing that now. So it looks like less, but it's because I'm doing half a recipe. I am starting with some oats. Now, if you have, these are just quick oats, not instant oats, but these are quick oats. But if you have whole, rolled oats, I use whatever oats I have. I just happen to have quick, so that's what I'm using here. So I have some quick oats here, but I wouldn't use steel cut and I wouldn't use oat groats, okay? Because that will not blend well and it'll kind of make it quite a dense waffle. We don't want a dense waffle, do we? I'm now going to use some corn grits. We're in the South. Are you guys grits eaters? Grits? Everybody here like grits? All right. I'm from the North. We don't like grits. But I like them in this. So I decided, and you could use cornmeal in this as well. You know, cornbread, you guys make cornbread. I know that. So, but I use grits because I like the texture of them. I think it works well in this recipe, but cornmeal would work as well. So put it down. Now these are organic grits, so I have like yellow corn grits. You could probably use hominy grits. You know, they're white, right? I think they're white. So you could use that as well, but I think I like the corn. I like these corn grits. All right, I'm going to use a little oil. Now, you don't have to use oil. This is a little olive oil. You don't have to use oil in this. You could actually use some nuts if you choose not to use oil. I just think that the oil keeps the moisture in it a little bit better. And so if you're oil free, the nuts are a great option. But if not, the oil will actually give it a little bit the moisture inside the waffle, making it a little more, you know, not dry. So I have the oil in there. Then we have, oh, I forgot to give the water. Let's put the water in. We're just using some water here. And a little bit of salt. Now I'm going to talk about salt in a bit, but we're just going to use a little salt here. And we have some sweetener. I am today using some agave nectar. I use agave in my cooking classes, and the reason why I do is because it's very neutral flavored, and I can use it in multiple recipes. You'll see I use it in another 1 or 2 recipes here today. But you could use honey if you like honey. You could use maple syrup in this. But maple syrup actually will not be strong enough to give it a mapley flavor, but it could be the sweetener, and you just need a little bit. We're only using a few tablespoons here in this recipe. And then I'm using some baking powder. Now this is where I'm going to tell you, I wrote a tablespoon of baking powder on your recipe. It's actually 2 teaspoons. A tablespoon makes the waffles actually too light and they become real crispy but too airy on the inside. So I don't know why I didn't change that, but in my cookbook it's correct. But here, I'm messy Marvin in the kitchen if you didn't notice. Okay, but here I don't know why I didn't change it on there. But so if you want to just make that change on your thing, it's 2 teaspoons rather than 1 tablespoon. You can try 1 tablespoon, but you're just going to have very crispy, crispy waffles. All right, the next thing that we have in here is another little trick of the trade here. I'm actually adding a little bit of cornstarch to my waffles, because I found to add the cornstarch to the waffle actually makes it very tender on the inside, but it actually crisps up nice on the outside. And so these are whole grain waffles. Remember, we're not using any kind of refined flours or anything. So, sometimes these can be a little dense. That's why I added the baking powder. You can actually eliminate the baking powder and these waffles are still really, really good. But if you want them a little lighter, I find that they cook a little faster and they're just a little lighter, then use the baking powder. And lastly, I'm using a little vanilla. Now, you want to hear an interesting story? Ron and I were in Texas, in real South Texas in August. And we had the opportunity to go over into Mexico. So we crossed the border into Nuevo Progreso. Do you know that they had these big bottles of Mexican vanilla, which has no alcohol in it because I don't use alcohol in my cooking? Big, huge bottles of vanilla, pure vanilla, right? For like $2. I'm like, give me some of those. Actually, the big one was $4. The little one, which I carry with me, is $2. But it's pure vanilla. So, hello. There's Ron. Say hello, Ron. All right. I want to let you know that Ron, like I had mentioned yesterday, the natural remedies, that he's my Vanna White, but I could not do this without him. So thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. All right. He's out here. He's looking for the tray. I know what he's doing here. So anyway, now all we're going to do, now you saw how simple that is. All we're going to do is blend this up. So you always want to start your blender on low and roll it up. And that's going to save you from a shower of blessings, because I have cleaned, well, I haven't, Ron has cleaned off the ceiling multiple times because I am sometimes a little bit ahead of the game there. And anyway, so we're going to start low and just blend. And that is it. You have your waffles. So now we have a waffle iron waiting for this waffles. So Ron, would you like to take these? And now, wasn't that easy? Remember I mentioned in the beginning, simple, nutritious, and delicious. I believe simple because we're using simple ingredients, right? And simple procedure, right? Nutritious, it's the most important part, so it's right in the middle. The crux of the matter, nutritious. And then delicious. Because if you don't like the food you're eating, you're never going to stick with a change, a transition to a healthier way. So I believe that we should make foods taste good. Nobody wants to eat cardboard, right? God gave us taste buds. So if he gave them to us, then we should use them, right? So let's make our healthy foods taste good. That's what I say. How easy was that? Yes, question.
If you use honey instead of the agave,
Yeah. It would be, but you're welcome to adjust that. If you think it's too sweet, I think, taste the waffle today, and if you can, and if you, some people might be allergic or something like that. But if you find it to be a little too sweet, just back off a little bit. I think it's got a good balance.
I have a question.
Sure.
Like for me, I'll be the only one eating this. So can that go in the refrigerator and be used again the next day?
You could, but it'll be very thick because it's whole grains, and so it's going to absorb the water. You would have to add some water to thin it down. What I would recommend, I make my waffles ahead of time, and we freeze them. These are excellent. In fact, it makes a good amount of waffles, the recipe that I gave you. We freeze them, and then I usually have them on Saturday mornings. So what I do, turn on the oven, throw the waffles in, heat them up while I'm getting dressed, come back, waffles are done, right? Because I'm just heating them up because they've already been cooked on the waffle iron. By the way, this is a great pancake recipe too. For those of you who don't have a waffle iron, you can make this as a pancake. The only reason I know is because my cousin doesn't have a waffle iron. When I wrote the book, I sent her one, and she's like, "Oh, Carin, those look so good, but I don't have a waffle iron. Can you make them at pancakes?" I'm like, "I've never have." She goes, "I'll try it." She called me back, and she said, they came out great. So you can make this like a pancake as well.
they go in the toaster.
Yeah, you could take them out. But I want to tell you something about freezing food. If you're taking something right out of the freezer and putting it into the oven or in the toaster, it takes a while to heat up that frozen thing, right? Your best bet, and you could still put it in the toaster as well, is take it out of the freezer the night before and let it defrost, because it won't dry it out on the inside. Because sometimes we have to bring something up to temperature, and when we're doing that, we're cooking it, and we don't want to cook it. We just want to heat it, right? Yeah, you can put it, no problem. You can put them in the toaster. Any other questions? By the way, I love questions, so you guys can ask me anything except my age. But I look good for 80, right? All right. So, all right, our next recipe. Let me come over here to my tray. Oh, I can actually roll this over to me. Right? We could do that. Why not? Nope, except for I'm hitting the cord. That's all right. All right. Our next recipe is we have to top this waffle with something. So why don't we top it? Well, it all sounded good until I realized I have to go over here to cook. And going back now. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so let's top this waffle. Why not with some fruit sauce, right? Instead of just a maple syrup, although maple syrup is really good because it is it's not a processed food, believe it or not. Maple syrup is actually natural because all you're doing is, condensing it by boiling it down. And it's natural from the sap from the maple tree. However, you know what? Some people, maple syrup, if you're a diabetic, maple syrup is extremely high on the glycemic index. So somebody who's diabetic, maple syrup is not a good choice for them. So you could do this fruit sauce without a sweetener. You could just do it with fruit, or you could use a sweetener called stevia. I'm going to talk about sweeteners now. In fact, before we get our fruit sauce started, I want to ask you a question. In 1822, how many pounds of sugar do you think the average American ate in a year? All right, Nathan, how many pounds of sugar?
A pound.
Just 1 pound? For the whole year?
3.
3 pounds for the year, okay. No, a little more than that. But not much, believe it or not. 8.9. That's all refined sugar. When I talk about refined sugar, I'm talking about white sugar, okay? Because a lot of foods naturally have sugar like fruit and stuff like that. But refined sugar, 8.9. But you know what? Let's go to the turn of the century, 1900. How many pounds of sugar do you think the average American ate in 1900? Nathan, go ahead. 15? Not quite. How many?
12?
More. I meant when I said not quite, I mean you're just not there yet.
20?
One more guess.
25?
65. 65 pounds of sugar in 1900. Oh, but wait, there's more. 1950. All right, ladies, we're home in the kitchen. Husbands were working. Kids were coming home from school and chocolate chip cookies were on the plate ready for them, right? Husband comes home, dessert was made, beautiful apple pie, right? How many pounds of sugar did the average American eat in a year in 1950? Well, very close, 145. Wait, was it 145? No, 114, I'm sorry, 114. Actually, Nathan was closer. Sorry, 114. And now?
You're talking just one person.
One person. But wait, there's more. The year 2000. How many pounds of refined sugar does the average American eat in the year 2000? Yes, Nathan.
200.
Oh, not that much. How about 148? 148 pounds of sugar for the average person in a year equals 43 teaspoons a day. Okay, imagine taking your sugar bowl, putting a bowl out, and just taking a teaspoon and go 43 times, and then just eating it up, and you're done for the day. 43 teaspoons. But wait, listen to this. There's a huge process involved in refining sugar to its status of white sugar. You know, there's a lot of different stages. There's different types of sugar. There's some sugar in the raw, which is moderately processed. There's a thing called jaggery. There's all different kinds of sugar, but we're talking about white sugar. How many feet of sugar cane? Now, you know sugar cane, right? How many feet of sugar cane does it take to make 43 teaspoons of sugar? Interesting, right? Whoever thought of these things? I don't know, but it's a great statistic. All right, I'll tell you. 130 feet of sugar cane equals 43 teaspoons of sugar. That's how much processing goes into the sugar. Now, is sugar bad for us? Trick question. I was just waiting for somebody to say yes. The answer is no. God made the sugar cane in a perfect package. You know, the foods that God made, and when they're as grown and simply prepared, are healthy for us. You know, does anybody ever had sugar cane? Real cane? Okay, you've been to if you've been to anywhere like Caribbean or tropical places, right? They'll have sugar cane, right? You can take that sugar cane. Now, if you've eaten it, how much did you eat? Let me ask Liz. How much did you eat? Very little. Ron and I were in India. We were climbing over a mountain. It took us 9 hours to climb over this mountain. So after lunch, we were kind of petering out a couple hours after lunch, and the people that we were with, the guide that was with us, you know, taking us to the other side, to the other village, said, "Here, have some sugar cane." We had like sugar cane this much. We couldn't even eat the whole thing. We had like half of it, right? You just suck on it. It's full of nutrition. It's full of fiber. It's full of vitamins and minerals. That sugar is not bad for us. But when we take what God gave us and kind of mess with it and take all the good stuff out and leave nothing, then this is what we end up with something that is bad for us. And so that is why, you know, we want to replace like that kind of sugar. There are great options. My favorite option is stevia. Now, you'd say, oh, why do you like stevia, Carin? Well, first of all, I'm not talking about the stevia that you find in the Walmart, okay? Because if you've ever tried that, first of all, it's made with a bunch of other stuff, not just stevia, and it doesn't taste good. I wouldn't use it. I don't like it. So, but I'll tell you what I use, what works for me. Stevia is not a sugar, by the way. Stevia is actually an herb. It's a sweetener. It's naturally sweet. In fact, where I worked as the cooking class instructor, we had an herb garden and we had a stevia plant. Stevia is very tropical and does not like the cold. Nobody brought him in and he died. But I'm not bitter over that. I'm not sad over it. But I liked it because I would go out there and I would take a leaf and I would chew on the leaf because it was so sweet. It was like candy almost. It was amazing. But stevia is an herb. It's no glycemic. It has no calories and it has no, it doesn't affect your glycemic load. So stevia is one of the best options for somebody who is watching their blood sugar. Now, the interesting thing, I don't like the powdered stevia. If you could get fresh stevia or dried stevia leaves, if you make tea or something like that, you can throw them in and they sweeten that tea up beautifully. But you can't grind them up and use them in baking, right? Or other desserts. I buy actually liquid stevia. Now, where I find it, I get an organic liquid stevia at Trader Joe's. It's like a bottle, the same size bottle as that, similar to that, for $6.99. And it's pretty, and you don't need a lot of stevia. Trust me, you'll need drops. All right, so I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, okay? And I used to make lemonade for them and things like that. But I used to use like a sugar in the raw, like a turbinado type of sugar. But I said, I should start using a little more stevia. So I started like using less sugar and more stevia. Less sugar, more stevia, less sugar, more stevia. Then I was using all stevia. And now, 6 years later, 10 years later, they don't even know. So I just use stevia. Nobody knows. If I can pull it off on them, I can pull it off on anybody, right? So anyway, it was really, you'd really have to look it up. Like I just now know how much to put in my thing for lemonade. There are charts online. I couldn't, right off the top of my head, I can't tell you, so I don't want to, the liquid. Now I'm sure there are good quality powdered ones maybe. I have not come across them yet though. So that's what you would use for baking. But I'm going to tell you what my second favorite sugar is. Coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is, you can get that actually in Walmart. Coconut sugar is actually the sap of the coconut palm that's actually just captured and crystallized. There's no processing it. They just dry it and then they grind it up and that's it. Okay? Coconut sugar is like the least processed dry sugar. Why I like coconut sugar is because it's actually a little bit less sweet than regular sugar. It helps us retrain our taste buds to desire things that are not so ultra sweet, how everybody is making things nowadays, right? So coconut sugar is a wonderful option for baking. So that's what I use. I don't use the liquid for baking. I use the liquid for other things like fruit sauces and things like that. But for baking, I use coconut sugar, okay? There's also dates. Dates are a great natural way. You can use date syrup. You can easily make date syrup by just taking some dates, softening them in some warm water. Make sure they're pitted dates, because if you don't, you will ding, 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 ding. It'll sound like popcorn in your blender, and then you'll break a tooth. And I don't want that to happen. Then you say, Carin told me to make date syrup, and I broke my tooth. I don't want that. Use a pitted date. But soften them, and you can blend that with a little water to whatever consistency you like. And you can use that, and you know what, it's perfect like in oatmeal or a hot cereal. You could use it for the fruit sauce. You could use it for anything. And it is lower on the glycemic load, so it's a great option. So those are some of my favorites. Then, of course, we've got things like sugar in the raw, turbinado sugar. These types of sugars are moderately processed. They're a much better choice than a refined sugar, like the white sugar. However, they are still processed. So it's a good step down. But don't get stuck there, You keep going to the coconut. That's what I say. Maple syrup, I mentioned to you already. We are using agave nectar. Again, I like agave because it's very neutrally flavored. I can use it in multiple recipes without affecting the flavor of the recipe. It won't be distinct like honey or maple syrup or something like that. What is another one? Honey. Let's talk about honey really quick. So if you consider yourself a vegan, now this is not a vegan cooking class, this is a plant-based cooking class, because there are some differences between vegan, although sometimes I look up recipes and I look up vegan whatever, right? Vegan and plant-based are completely different, because you see, vegan really stemmed from Far Eastern religions that really focused on animals. And I love animals, trust me, I would have a farm if I did not do what I do. But that's not my whole focus on my nutritional piece. I want to also get good nutrition. So vegans actually, nutrition isn't the primary, it's the animal that's the primary. And it's a lifestyle where, it's almost like a culture. No leather, they won't use products that have been tested on animals, things like that. And so, listen, it's very admirable, but the nutrition piece is sometimes lacking because who here likes Oreos? Anybody? Oreos? Yeah, right? Okay, I only have 2 people. That's not true. You don't have to raise your hand, but if you did, it's not a judgment zone here. I am not going home because, all right, who likes Oreos? I have my hand up too, all right? Oreos are vegan, but are they healthy? That's the key. So you see, a vegan food doesn't necessarily make it healthy. Honey, actually, people who are vegan do not eat honey because they feel it might be an abuse to the bee. They feel it's an animal product. So, but I like to look at it, I like to always put everything back into the biblical terms and say, okay, can I find 3 witnesses that would tell me honey's okay? All right, ready? Sweeter also than honey and the land of milk and locust and wild. That's 3, I'm done. I don't have to do any more, right? There's like actually 60 or more references to honey in the Bible. So I figured God must have actually said it was okay to have a little honey. So but honey is a superfood. We used honey yesterday in our natural remedies. Why? It's an antibiotic, antiseptic, anti-allergy, anti-inflammatory, I said antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial. I don't know if I said that one already. All right, it's anti-everything what ails you. It's also, I mentioned this yesterday, never goes bad. Honey in the pyramids where they found and they tested it is exactly the same composition nutritionally as honey that comes right out of the hive. It never goes bad. You can actually just, warm it up and you will have honey again, the same as honey was, when you got it from the store. So if it ever crystallizes in your cabinet, do not throw it out because you're wasting your money because it never goes bad. And it's also great for healing, but we talked about that yesterday. I don't have time to talk about that. All right, I think that's good on the sweeteners. All right, I think that's all I was talking about. Yep. High fructose corn syrup. It is not natural. It is not healthy. Everything has high fructose corn syrup in it. Please try to find things that do not. In fact, if you look and something says organic, chances are it will not have high fructose corn syrup in it. Most corn is genetically modified. So if something is organic, it cannot be genetically modified. Therefore, you won't get high fructose corn syrup. It is a very, very hard process in your liver, and it causes a lot of damage. I'm going to tell you the rate of diabetes when they incorporated high fructose corn syrup into foods back in the 80s, the rate of diabetes, especially type 2 in children. Type 2 used to be called adult onset diabetes. Now, children 5 and 6 years old are getting type 2 diabetes with 400 and 500 sugars. Since high fructose corn syrup has been incorporated into the diet, the numbers have skyrocketed with children. Yes?
I've noticed a lot of products have taken out the high fructose, but they still have corn syrup.
Sure. Well, the high fructose corn syrup is a concentrate of the syrup. They're pulling out the sugar and taking out a lot of other stuff. It is very highly, highly, highly processed. Corn syrup would be a little bit better, but the problem is corn is 88% genetically modified. And I can't go into genetic modification but I'm going to tell you that is a lecture that I do that is literally it will open your eyes to a lot of health issues based on our food sources. Remember, like I said, 60 to 70% of all disease comes from what we eat. And when things get changed and corrupted and stuff, we suffer in our health. This corn syrup is obviously better, but I couldn't say it's good. How's that? Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's go to our cooking now. I keep saying that, right? I'm going to cook, I promise you. All right, fruit sauce. We've got 5 cups of berries. Now, I'm using frozen berries here. These are frozen wild blueberries. I'm using them because, number one, well, they're not frozen anymore because they've been sitting out here and I talk too much. But the frozen, I use these, number one, because it is not blueberry season, is it? And I like blueberries. And when you buy frozen fruits and vegetables, they really freeze them at the peak of freshness. Now, granted, fresh is best. If it was the middle of June, we would get nice, beautiful blueberries. But it's not. So I wanted blueberries. We got frozen. But what they do is they harvest them at the peak of freshness, and they flash freeze them. So they maintain most of their nutrition. Good news, right? So it's like a little step down from fresh, but it's not too bad. And we get like a good quality. If I buy blueberries in the store right now, you're not going to get a nice, sweet, delicious blueberry, are you? So frozen is fine. This recipe doesn't just work with berries. I call it in my cookbook very berry fruit sauce, but we make it with mango at home. We make it with apples. We can make it with anything. You can use any fruit you want. Citrus doesn't work. Yes, Ron?
When we were in Jamaica, we made a star fruit.
Oh yeah, in Jamaica I made it with star fruit because when I do cooking schools around the world, I have to use what they have. And I wanted to make mango. That was as soon as I get there, I find mangoes aren't in season. I'm like, what? So star fruit it was. I never even made it with star fruit. Was it good, Ron? It was delicious. I don't even really like star fruit. It's kind of plain. It was great in the fruit sauce. Who knew, right? Now I know. If I ever go back to the Caribbean, I can make star fruit sauce. All right, so we've got our blueberries. I'm going to add some water here. Now this is a half, I already did one, so this is just a half recipe again for thing. Now I'm actually adding some sweetener. Remember I talked about the agave? I'm using the agave again. You know why I like agave as well in my cooking schools? Because it pours easy. You know, honey is hard to get out sometimes. I'm like scraping. This makes it easy too. And like I said, I can use it for multiple recipes. So I'm putting that. Now, you don't have to sweeten this up. If you wanted to use a fruit juice, if you wanted to use date syrup, stevia, you can use any of those types of things to sweeten it up as well. But because I like to be a good steward of God's money, and when I'm buying the recipe items for my cooking school, I want to use them as much as I can in multiple recipes. So we're using the agave today. So we're going to get this. I'm going to put this on my little hot plate here, turn you on, power level, up, and away we go. Now, you see this spoon? It's not dirty. I love wooden spoons. It's my favorite cooking utensil of all time. I don't know why though, because I grew up in an Italian household and my mother thought this was not a spoon but a weapon. Wooden spoon was like a weapon for her. You know, it was like she would chase us with a wooden spoon. But I think my grandmother taught her that, right? But wooden spoons, I love wooden spoons. But obviously, I use this one for fruit sauce all the time because I've already stained it and ruined it. So please, just don't judge my spoon. I love my spoon. Don't judge him. All right, we're going to get that. We're just going to bring this to a boil. And what I'm going to do is I actually have, now we're going to thicken this up. I also like to make recipes that you can use for multiple things. This is great to top waffles, pancakes, any of those crepes, whatever. However, one time, now I'm going to make something called a cornstarch slurry. I'm using some regular temperature water, room temperature water, and some cornstarch. I'm mixing this together. Now, ladies, those of you who cook, why am I doing this? What? I won't clump. That's right, because you see, if you put cornstarch into something warm, it will clump. Well, you know, I remember I told you I have a little attention deficit. No joke, right? Well, anyway, so one time I was like doing things quickly, and I threw the cornstarch in. Beep, lumpy bumpy. But this is necessity is the mother of invention. I did not have any more fruit that I wanted to use. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Your blender, right? I threw the fruit sauce in there, blended it up. You have a fruit syrup. It worked perfectly. So perfect for like topping desserts. You know, maybe drizzling it on like a nice like something or other. But also good for like if you wanted to like use this instead of a sweetener for a hot cereal, like a multigrain cereal or an oatmeal or whatever you like. It's perfect. So you can, and this makes a good amount, this recipe. So it's freezable. See, I love I love things that I can do in bulk and have when it's ready, right? So I throw as much as I can in the freezer. In fact, today, where I was eating lunch before you guys got here, and I was like, I took something out of the freezer. I didn't even know what it was. I kind of like had to figure out, because it was from, you know, a while ago, not that long ago, but a while ago, and I couldn't remember what I put in it. But it was pretty good. We ate it. So anyway, so sometimes you take things out, and I'm like, Brian, I don't know what, I told him, I said, I don't know what this is, but we're having this with mashed potatoes, right? So anyway, it was very good. It was just, I made like a gravy with just some stuff in it, and it came out good. So, but it was a while ago. So I couldn't remember exactly. All right, so I'm leaving this here. And we're going to actually stick that in our fruit sauce as soon as that heats up. And that'll just take us a minute. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
What is the difference between baking soda and baking powder?
Ah, that's an excellent thing. So baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. Baking soda, although is in a lot of recipes, I would tell you that baking soda is, sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. Ignore that. Okay, so baking soda is actually an irritant to the gastrointestinal system. It is something we should not put in our recipes because it can affect the stomach lining, okay? Now, what is baking powder? Baking powder is taking baking soda and something called a food acid, whether it's lemon juice, whether it's some kind of acid, and putting that together. What that does is it neutralizes the effect of the baking soda so that it becomes not a problem to your gastrointestinal system. Now people say, oh, but sometimes they call for in a recipe baking soda. What you can do is actually use baking powder, but it's actually 3 times the amount. So if something is a teaspoon of baking soda, you would use a tablespoon of baking powder. It may or may not affect your flavor of your recipe. I haven't had a problem with it. I kind of like play around with that and see, and I haven't had a problem because sometimes I see recipes and it has baking soda in it and I'm like, I don't want to use the baking soda. So that's the difference. But baking soda is safe because it's chemically neutralized in a factory, so it's perfectly neutralized. And you can buy aluminum free now, which you want to do that because you don't want, it's processed, some of them are processed with aluminum baking powder, and aluminum, you can get aluminum toxicity if you've heard of that. We can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. All right, I just want to let you know my blueberries are bubbling. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pour my cornstarch in, and you'll see very quickly we have a beautiful, thick, lovely fruit sauce. How's that? Nice? You're going to like this on top of a waffle? All right. Well, Ron, I see you over there. And we're going to give you, can you take both or are you going to come back for that?
I can do it.
He can do it. You got it? Oh, here, wait. Ta-da. All right. How easy was that? Again, you make these things ahead of time. You don't want to get up at like 4 in the morning and make breakfast, right? Make them and then have them ready and then just heat them up. You can heat that up. Take that right out of the freezer, put it in the refrigerator, then you could just warm it up and you got it. Sometimes if it's a little too thick, just add a little water and it'll work fine. All right, any questions? Fruit sauce.
Yeah, what are you using to freeze that stuff with? Because sometimes, you can get freezer burn.
I have one of those vacuum sealers. I vacuum seal like everything. I do a lot of that. I vacuum seal everything. Done. I actually even have one in the motorhome because I vacuum seal everything. So because we're 2 people, and I come from an Italian family, so we don't know how to cook like for 2. We have to cook for 20. So when I see a recipe, I'm always like doubling it, and there's only 2 of us. So I can't help it. So that's all my grandmother, my uncle would come home from going out with his friends or whatever, and it'd be like 11 o'clock at night. My grandmother would be in bed, and she'd hear him come in. She'd get up, and his friends would be here, and she'd get up and cook like a whole meal for them. I'm like, Grandma, really? You don't need to get up. Like, he could cook himself. No, but that's why she just thought, I don't know why, but the Italian. Anybody here Italian, you can relate, right? You have family like mine who food was very focused on food. Our whole life was, everything was food, 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 food. All right, let me get this over here. Aha. All right.
So both of these are in your cookbook? Both of these recipes?
The first 2 are. This one that I'm doing is not. This coconut corn chowder is not in my cookbook. All right. So, oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah, here we go. So what I have here is some potatoes, if you see here, and I also have some water because I poured the water in the potatoes already just to make life easy and make less dishes for Ron because he has to do all the dishes. We are going to make a coconut corn chowder. Where's my coconut corn chowder recipe? All right. So first we started with 5 cups of diced potatoes. Again, this is a half recipe, so it looks light, but we've made a few recipes already because I promise you this is a fan favorite. So we're doing it here as a fan favorite. So I have 5 cups. Oh, pretend it's 5 cups. It's 2.5. I have onion, chopped onion. We're putting that in. We're mixing that up. And we're actually going to get that ready. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix my seasonings in. Let me turn this on. I'm going to mix some seasonings in, and we're going to put a lid on it. Now, important, with this recipe, you want to really put a lid on it because I'm actually going to add a little water. I noticed that when I poured the water in, some of it got absorbed into the potato. So I'm just going to add a little more. But if you follow the recipe, I did this ahead of time. So I thought I was doing myself a favor, but I think I have to keep them separate from now on. All right, so I'm adding a little water, but you don't need to. I'm going to add my seasonings, and then I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to soften these potatoes. Really only take a few minutes, maybe 7 minutes or so to do that. But the reason why is because I'm building the broth here, but if I don't put the lid on it, you're going to evaporate, and then you're going to have a real thick soup. And I kind of want it to be like soupy, not stewy, right? So I'm going to start with something called chicken style seasoning. I have a recipe in my cookbook for this, but you can also purchase this in health food stores. It is a mix of seasonings that uses no animal products. So it's not like chicken fat or chicken flavoring. It is just herbs and seasonings put together to almost taste like chicken broth. It's amazing. So we're going to put that in because then we have that there. And we'll put a little salt. Hold that thought on salt. I promise I'm going to talk to you about it. And, oops, let me get a little more in there. And I have some onion powder. I like a little onion powder. So we're going to put a little in there. All right. And we will mix this up. And we'll let this just cook. And while we're doing that, I will talk about some other stuff. Now, I have my other recipe, my other ingredients here. We'll put that there. This is not canned corn, this is frozen corn. You could use canned corn. The only reason why I don't is because they use a lot of salt in canned corn. So, you'd want to rinse them really well or buy the no salt one. And because this is frozen and it is not cooked, remember, we want to get as much nutrition as we can. So frozen corn will hold more nutrition. Even though we're going to warm it up in here, we're not going to overcook it because I'm going to put this in last. Okay, so it's going to have better nutrition. Canned corn is already cooked in there, so it has a little less nutrition. But you could use it if that's what you have at home. I always say, use what you have. You don't want to, if you already have it, then do it.
I can.
Well, you can it. You then use you're canning fresh corn. That's not some green giant out there making it, right? All right, good. Well, then you use your corn. Absolutely. That's great. So I can, but I'm not really good at it. I don't have any time. That's my problem. So we can't really grow a good garden. So I can what I can, but anyway. But I appreciate people who can because it's nice to have that stuff all year round, isn't it? It's beautiful. All right, so let's talk a little bit about dairy products. I'm doing a coconut corn chowder. So the base of this soup is actually going to be coconut milk from the can, a can of coconut milk.
Does that give it a coconutty taste?
You know what? It does a little bit. If you don't really like coconut, it's not strong. So if you tolerate coconut, yes. If you hate coconut, I would tell you to try it because it's delicious. But if you hate coconut, you may not love it. All right. But I always say try it anyway.
Could you maybe use a light coconut milk?
You could.
Less coconut?
You could. The light coconut milk not only has less calories, but it also has a less of a coconut flavor. You could do this recipe with a plant-based milk, like you could use a soy milk or whatever. But I'm going to tell you, the flavors meld so nice together with this that the coconut works well. But if you're not a coconut lover, I don't know. I can't fix that for you unless you try something. You can, but I think a recipe is a guide. It is not the end all be all. It is not the gospel of Carin, right? It's a guide. It's what my family likes. So if I made a recipe and that's what they like, you might like something else. I use blueberries a lot in the fruit sauce. We also, like I said, use mango in fruit sauce. But if you like strawberry, use strawberry. Well, we do strawberry sometimes, but we tend to go with what we like, right? So use what you have at home, use what you like, and make it your family friendly. If your family doesn't like a certain herb, try something else. We put in dill in this because dill and potato go very nice together. It really complements this well. However, if you don't like dill, try cilantro. Try, use parsley. It gives a freshness. You can use so many other things rosemary goes nice with potatoes. You could try that if you like that. So, use what you like. I think that's really the best suggestion. I would tell you to try it. If you don't love coconut, you may not love it. But it is a fan favorite. So, anyway, all right. So we are going to talk a little bit about dairy products. The percentage of protein in milk, cow's milk, is extremely high in comparison to the percentage of protein in human milk. And the reason why is because cow's milk is made for who? Baby cows. Mommy's milk, mother's milk, breast milk is made for baby humans, right? All right. Now, let me tell you something interesting. How long do you think it takes a cow to double its weight? A calf. Any farmers out here? Not long. A month. Okay? How long do you think it takes a baby human? 8 or 9 months sometimes. It depends. 7 to 9 months. So let's say 8. Okay. The reason why, are we smarter than cows? Some of us are, right? Some of us are. All right. The thing is that the development, we have a brain development that we need to slowly develop so that we have judgment. Animals cannot have judgment. They can't reason. They can't say, well, let me do this or this. They're like, I'm doing this. You know, they impulsively do things because of instinct, right? But we have the ability to reason. Our brain has to develop on a slower basis so that we can be who we are. God in his perfect, creation made mother's milk perfect for babies. He did not make cow's milk for babies. He made mother's milk for babies. So you can see that, we develop differently. So, actually, I'm sorry, it was 2 months. They do. How about this? How long does a baby rat? How about doubles its weight in 1 day? So no rat's milk for any of you, okay? No rat's milk, because that'll really push you over the edge, right? How about lactose intolerance? Have you heard of lactose intolerance? Well, let me tell you a little interesting thing. Of course, as a Christian, I always look to, God as our creator. When God built us, something really interesting happens about the age of 2. We stop making the enzyme lactase. Lactase actually breaks down lactose into glucose and galactose, 2 sugars, okay? But God says, guess what? Once you're weaned, you don't need milk. Now, we use milk in so many applications, whether it's in cooking, even for other countries, life-sustaining because of the protein in milk. People have to eat, to survive. But in God's creation, when we were made as humans, once a baby is weaned, they don't need milk. Nobody needs to drink milk after they're weaned, because once we start eating food, we get all the nutrition we need. So it's interesting that most people are lactose intolerant. And usually people of color, actually, and Asian people are the most lactose intolerant. But I think it's do I have the statistic here? Did I write it down? No, I didn't. I think it's 3 out of every 4 people in the world are lactose intolerant because they don't make lactase anymore. So you can see now that's why they have Lactaid and all those kind of milks out there for people who are lactose intolerant, because God said you don't need it anymore. Why keep making something you don't need, right? He's pretty efficient, but of course we kept going and going with the milk, right? So it's interesting. Now, let's see. Oh, calcium. People say, oh, but we need to drink milk because of calcium, right? Do you know that calcium from milk does not help bone integrity? It does not. It does not absorb properly for strength. Countries that are milk-drinking countries, like Scandinavian countries especially, and the United States and Canada, have the highest percentage of osteoporosis. Countries that are non-milk drinking, such as Asian countries, the lowest amount of osteoporosis. So you see, we've been fed a lie for so long. Oh yeah, drink milk, it does the body good, yay. Well, it doesn't do our body good if we have a tendency for osteoporosis. A lot of women, especially people who are petite stature, have, they lose bone integrity. And because of that, calcium, you should be getting your calcium for things like leafy green vegetables. Or sesame seeds. Do you know sesame seeds have the highest amount of calcium that you can get per serving than any other thing? Sesame seeds. Leafy green vegetables. Excellent for calcium. So what you need to do is, to strengthen also, you need vitamin D, right? So they get the vitamin D in the milk, right? Vitamin D, it's important there. You know where you should get your vitamin D from? The sun. That's right, the sunlight. That is what's helping us when we're building our bones and strengthening and being able to absorb the proper amount of calcium. So milk, those types of things. Ladies, I'm going to tell you, they did a study. You looked at your watch. Okay, we have time. All right, we looked. They did a study, and do you know that 1 8-ounce glass of milk per day can increase your tendency to possibly have breast cancer by 60%. 60. 1 8-ounce glass of milk a day. If you have that genetic propensity, then you will probably, drinking even just 1 glass of milk, have a problem with that. Now I'm just going to test one of our potatoes here. By the way, with these potatoes, I left the skin on. Why did I leave the skin on? That's right, the fiber and the nutrition. That not soft yet, so we're going to let them boil up a storm here. Okay, keep boiling, my friends, keep boiling. All right, so. All right, well, then if we can't, if they're not ready, we'll talk more about coconut. How's that? I know you don't love coconut, do you?
I do not.
Are you going to try the soup anyway? She's gonna. She's a trooper. Yay! Don't let me coerce you, but I highly recommend it. All right. So coconut. Well, coconut, there's high fiber, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Now, going back again, speaking of God, our creator, coconut water is one of the best rehydration fluids that you can drink if you are having dehydration, okay? Do you think it was by accident that God put the coconut trees around the equator? That's pretty smart of him, wasn't it? Because who needs the rehydration fluid? Those people in the tropics, right? They need it more than we do. I mean, people, the more north you go, the less dehydrated you're going to get because you're not getting the sun like they are. Isn't that amazing? Do you know, by the way, a coconut is actually, the coconut water is completely sterile in the coconut. I have a friend, his name is Dr. Tim Riesenberger. He does a lot with a group called ISLA, which is international, it's doctors, he's a physician. He goes all over the world when there's not natural disasters, but any disaster, and aids, as an American physician, he aids wherever is needed. He once had to run an IV line from a coconut during a natural disaster. I think it was an earthquake in Haiti. He said, but Carin, the one thing I learned when I was in medical school is that the coconut's completely sterile. So I ran the IV fluids through that. Isn't that amazing? So yeah, it is amazing. So anyway, so excellent, because the electrolytes, and let's see, what else you know how like a can of coconut milk will separate where you get the cream on the top and then the water on the bottom a lot of times? Don't throw the water out if you just need the cream for like a dessert or something. Put it in your smoothie. It's got so many wonderful, vitamins and minerals and all that. It's really great. All right, let's see, that was that. All right, see, I can stay on track. Okay. I could. Would you like me to talk about gluten?
I have a son that's gluten sensitive.
Sure.
And I don't know how
I will.
I love bread, and
I will.
how that works.
I will happily talk about gluten. How about this? Let's see if my potato's not done, I'll talk about gluten now. If not, I'll talk about it at the end, but you just got to remind me because sadly, remember squirrel, where's the squirrel? I lose track. So it's not that I don't think gluten is important, but I forget. I just have so many things to talk about and not enough time. Why is my potatoes going so slow? All right, they're not done yet, so I'll talk about gluten now. So let's talk a little bit about whole grains first, okay? Whole grains, we're talking about refined white flours and things like that. Things that are refined are really not good for us because they're not in their natural state. But whole grains are something that we need to incorporate, especially people like who are diabetic. A lot of times don't realize that, their blood sugar is going to be, raised when they're eating a refined food because it does not have the proper amount of fiber. I'm going back to God again when I say that He created food in its perfect package. Let's talk about wheat, okay, because we'll talk about gluten. So wheat. Wheat is a wheat kernel of wheat comes with 3 parts to it. I don't know why they're not done, but I think they should be done. But anyway, okay. It comes with, the first thing is the wheat bran. You've heard of wheat bran. It's the outer coating of the kernel. Then there's a little thing called the wheat germ. We've all heard of wheat germ, right? That's the little nubby on the bottom, right? And then, or the top. Then you have something called the endosperm. The endosperm is the starch, okay? The wheat bran has 90+% of the fiber in the wheat, okay? The wheat germ has 95% of the nutrition. And then you have the starchy part, which is what they do is they strip the bran, they strip the germ, and they give you the white, they grind it up, and that's what you get white flour from. There's no balance. You see, remember we talked about we need the fiber to push everything out? We now are giving you straight starch with no fiber. There's no balance, hence why it can really spike blood sugars with people who have, diabetes. Now let's talk about gluten. Gluten is the protein in wheat, barley, a couple other grains, okay? Wheat, the problem is that it is the protein and it's a very high iron source. So it's actually not bad for us. Sometimes, people 15 years ago said, oh my gosh, I want to be gluten-free, it's better for you. Being gluten-free is not better for you. If you have a sensitivity or something like celiac disease, you can't even eat gluten because it's damaging your gastrointestinal system. Somebody like your son has a sensitivity or an intolerance to gluten. He has like some, repercussions when he eats it. Maybe he gets bloated, he gets pain, maybe diarrhea, something like that. The good news is that gluten is not hurting him, but it's uncomfortable. He's not damaging anything, but he's uncomfortable. So let's talk a little bit about gluten. The problem in this country, I work at a campus that has a lot of international students that come to study medical missionary work. And what I've found is that, hold on. I don't understand why these potatoes are not, oh wait, some of them are, all right. I'm sorry, talking to the potato. All right, back to it. All right, so I noticed that people would come from other countries and all of a sudden, like 2 months down the road, they were like gluten sensitive and they never had gluten problems before. So I said, what is the problem here? What I recognized is that I did a little research. Wheat in the United States is hybridized to have a very high gluten content because you see, gluten really brings the texture. Hi.
Did you want this?
No, you can have it.
Take that?
I want that. Okay, so gluten, makes the texture of things. Like when you make a loaf of bread, you want it to have like elasticity when you're, kneading it and then boom, bouncy back and it has nice texture. But without the gluten, you're going to just get crumbly crumbs, right? It's not going to be good. So people realized the more gluten you had in things, you got sometimes better texture. We've now gotten accustomed to having things be that, not that dense, lighter and airier and all that. So people that may have slight gluten sensitivity now have real sensitivity because of the gluten that they eat. I would tell you that when I encounter people that have gluten sensitivity, I tell them to take gluten out of their diet completely for a couple months and then reincorporate organic wheat, because organic wheat is not usually hybridized as much, and see if they have if they can tolerate it. Because see, there's another problem with gluten intolerance. The same symptoms that people have gluten intolerance with actually are having a reaction to the chemical Roundup or glyphosate that is put on the wheat to kill the weeds. It mimics exactly the same. So your son may not be gluten intolerant. He might be having a reaction when he eats wheat products to the toxins in the glyphosate. So anyway, that's the story about gluten. There are a lot of products on the market. The problem, we're not gluten, my husband and I are not gluten sensitive or anything, but believe it or not, by God's grace, when I put this cookbook together, and I didn't even realize that I have 75 gluten-free recipes or gluten-free optional recipes in my cookbook, because, I don't know, because these are just ones that I believe that God brought together for the book. It's not all my favorites, it's just the ones that showed up in the book, and 75 of them. So because there are a lot of people who have that sensitivity. So there are a lot of things out there that you can eat. Texturally speaking, they're not always as good, but I know some products that are pretty good, and believe it or not, we obviously eat gluten-free and we don't even realize it, because the waffles that we're making today, gluten-free, fruit sauce is gluten-free, this is gluten-free, gluten-free, everything is gluten-free today. Huh, see?
So if you were wanting to make bread, you would look for a whole wheat.
Well, no, because that has the gluten in it. I have some recipes that when I teach a cooking class, I used to do 2 breads. I used to do a gluten-free and I used to do a regular. The gluten-frees are a little more complicated, and I realized I couldn't watch both groups of people at the same time, so I kind of had to get rid of the gluten-free because it's a little more steps and a lot more ingredients. But there are some gluten-free bread recipes out there. The thing about the only positive about a gluten-free bread recipe is you don't have to knead it, because the gluten, you're working the gluten when you're kneading the bread. You just have to mix it and put it in the oven is basically what it is. I would just look for some, if you want to take my card, I don't know, I have my card here. If you email me, I could try to find one that I know that is pretty good that I've heard from other people. Because I usually, when I make bread, I make regular bread because we're not gluten-free. So if you'd like, I could get you a recipe. All right, great. All right, I'm stopping this because this has got to be done. I mean, really, I shouldn't say I chopped those potatoes. Ron chopped those potatoes nice and small. So, all right, we're good. We're good. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I filled the gap, right? Filled the gap. Anyway, I'm going to take some of these potatoes out. I don't know what I said on there. It's not. By the way, I didn't write this recipe. I just love this recipe. So what did she say? How many? Remove 2 cups. Well, this is a half a recipe. This was 5 cups of potatoes. So I'll do like a cup and a half or maybe a little more of the potatoes. I'm taking them out. I'm leaving the broth in there. You can use a slotted spoon or you can just do what I'm doing. And remember, a chowder always has potatoes in it, so you want to leave some good potatoes in there. All right, that should be good. And then I'm going to add the coconut milk. Now, I'm only using a half a can because it's a half a recipe. So we're going to just pour that in there, and I'm going to blend this. I'm going to turn this off now. And this is going to be our creamy broth, because remember, we're not using any dairy. So we're using a little bit of the coconut milk along with the potato to give it that creaminess. And that's all you need to do, because there's really nothing to blend here. And I'm going to pour it back in to my broth. I probably used, there we go. And that is going to just mix in with our broth in there already. And once you get that mixed up with the broth, I'm going to add the corn, which was frozen at one time, but now it's not. And lastly, like I said, I like the complement of the dill. So I will put that in there and mix that in. And that is our soup. And that's what we are going to have. One of our recipes is our coconut corn chowder. I promise you, it's the fan favorite. I figured it was still soup season because it's already April, right? When I sent these recipes, it was actually in March. So, but April can still, listen, I love soup. Do you know if my favorite food is soup? I could eat soup for every meal. Right? Yep, we're good. Okay. Hi, he's Ron. We call him Lee, though, too. All right. That's easy breezy, right? We have some more dishes, Ron. All right. We'll give him that and that. Oh. Lee, are you taking the responsibility of Ron, or are you just supposed to say you're Ron?
I was just supposed to say I'm Ron.
Okay, well, can you tell the real Ron that I need another Vitamix?
And there's more dishes.
And there's more dishes. All right. All right. Moving on to our next recipe, we are going to do the not tuna pate, if you're following by. Thank you. I'm doing this. The not tuna pate. Now, this is one of my favorite recipes. I don't know why, it's just so good. We're going to serve this on crackers today. But this is something you could put on a sandwich. You know, you could put a scoop on a salad. You could put it, do you remember when they used to cut the tomato like jaggedy, take it off and do a stuffed tomato? You could put a scoop in a tomato, right? Make it pretty for like a little fancy schmancy little luncheon or something. I don't know what you're doing at your house, but anyway, we're going to start though. But I want to tell you, before we start this, I should tell you a little bit about it. This is a completely raw recipe. Now, what I mean by raw, it means that nothing here is cooked or warmed over the degrees of 116 Fahrenheit, okay? Now, what happens, remember when I was talking about the fresh fruits and vegetables and frozen, how they maintain nutrition. As we cook foods, we lose nutrition. So when we and something like 116 degrees Fahrenheit is tolerable to put your hand in. So you got to understand that that's not a high temperature for foods to be warmed at. So when we start warming foods, we're breaking down the nutrition. That is why I said start your breakfast with fresh fruits. Your lunch should start with a nice big salad and then eat your cooked foods. In fact, I think that a healthy person should at least eat 50% of their food raw, whether it's fruits and vegetables, okay? And then, but I don't agree with some people say, oh, we should be all raw. Our bodies, we need whole grains. I like to know here, who likes raw rice? Anybody like raw rice at the meal? No? Raw rice? No? Nobody? You see, grains should be well cooked. And although, as sin entered our lives in the Garden of Eden, God incorporated more foods into our diet because he knew that we were going to lack based on the fact that we were no longer going to live forever until, of course, we get to see him again. But on this earth, we are not going to live forever. And so he's incorporated other foods into our diet and allowed them into our diet. And so grains are something that need to be well cooked. So with that being said, you would that's the one thing that's why I don't advocate for a fully raw diet. A lot of people say we should go back to what God gave us. We are not the same as Adam and Eve, though, and that's what we have to remember. But incorporating more raw foods in our diet is very important nutritionally. And so we're going to do this. This is a fully raw recipe. And so I think you're going to love it too. So we're going to start with some raw sunflower seeds. These are just the shelled sunflower seeds. You can buy them. And the nice thing about them, they're very inexpensive. Now you noticed here that I have them soaking. There's a few reasons why I soaked these seeds and the nuts in this recipe. Does anybody know why? There's actually 3 reasons. Anybody know the first reason? Digestion? Well, yes, but why in digestion? Who said digestion? Well, not necessarily. All right, what do you think, Nathan?
Makes it easier to cook.
Makes it easier to blend. How's that? First, the culinary reason we soak nuts, seeds, and things of that nature is because when you blend them, you notice that I'm using a blender a lot. And I'm going to tell you, the blender is your best friend in the kitchen.
You do know I can hear you, right?
I'm sorry?
You do know I can hear you, but
The blender is your second best friend in the kitchen. Second best friend in the kitchen. So, okay, it's easier to blend, for sure. That's definitely, so there you go. So the digestion, let's talk about this a little bit. Why do we soak beans? Not just to soften them, but there's another reason. I like to say it a little more proper. So you don't get too windy. How's that? Now, actually, I had somebody in my class one time that was from the UK, and I asked the same question, and she goes, so you don't get windy? And I'm like, oh, I love that. I'm going to use that every time now. So that's fine. Yeah, right. It's because of gassiness, right? Well, do you know that nuts and seeds and things like that can actually cause us a little bit digestive disorder, like a little bit of gassiness or even a little bit of stomach issues if we eat a lot of nuts that are raw? And the reason why is because there's a protective enzyme on the outside of nuts, seeds, grains, and beans called phytic acid. Now, phytic acid, so digestion was correct, but you didn't give me the full answer. So that is the physiological problem. That's the body function that's happening when you eat too many. You can get a little bellyache. But there's something even more important. You know, when we're trying to do more whole food, plant-based cooking, you're going to realize that we are trying to eat more nutritious foods, right? Well, interestingly enough, phytic acid blocks the absorption of minerals in your small intestines. So if we're trying to eat healthier, we want to eat the most minerals, the positive minerals that we need to get from outside of our body into foods, and we're not absorbing them properly. Now, is it end all be all if you don't soak your walnuts and you eat a handful of them? The answer is no, because I know everybody here has eaten a raw nut and they live to tell another day, right? To see another day, right? So it isn't completely that, but if you're doing a lot of raw nuts, especially in plant-based cooking, you're substituting nuts in a lot of different recipes, you're going to find that you want to at least get that phytic acid off. So I recommend soaking them for at least 2 hours. That'll get most of the phytic acid off, or overnight is best because it'll get all of it off. But people say, oh, like I can't always think of that. And that's true. I mean, I've thrown nuts in the blender that haven't been soaked properly. But what I will tell you is I buy my nuts in bulk. I soak them overnight, drain them, rinse them really well, because you got to drain them and rinse them. I put them on baking sheets, let them air dry, and then I repackage them and throw them in my freezer or my refrigerator. And then they're ready. And then if I just need to soften them, I throw them in hot water, boiling for 5 minutes, whatever, boom, and then I put them in my blender and I'm good. So you can see you can make your life should be work smarter, not harder, right? So.
But if you put them in salt water and let them set for 12 hours in salt water, nuts, pecans, for 12 hours, and you take them out and dry them and dehydrate them.
Okay.
You can digest them and they won't hurt you at all.
Really? Well, I mean, I'm going to tell you that probably because you're getting most of the phytic acid off of them, because you're soaking them. I didn't know anything about the dehydrating or anything, but that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
They look like they've been polished.
Really? Yeah, how fancy. Look at that. Thank you. Well, I actually have I don't have pecans, but I do have sliced almonds. Now in this recipe, did I write it in this recipe? Where am I? Did I write sliced? Yes. Okay. I started doing this recipe with whole almonds, and I literally realized, like, I am working my blender so hard and my arms so hard because really the whole almond really doesn't soak up the water as well, so it's not as soft to blend. And then I'm like, wait, why can't I just use a sliced almond? Somebody did all the work for me. So they sliced it, and I said, use that. And so if you have sliced or slivered, it really works better for this recipe.
I did almonds like that.
Yeah, and it came out the same?
They're more softer.
Hmm.
You know how hard they are. And
well, whole almonds, yeah.
Yeah, I just put them in the refrigerator and go get what I want to eat.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for sharing. So the only problem is if you dehydrate, you'd have to dehydrate. If you wanted a fully raw recipe, you'd have to dehydrate them at a very low temperature, like I do 110 when I do raw things. And so it takes longer, but it still gets dehydrated.
This one's just got a light bulb in it.
Oh.
I think it's got 18 racks.
Hmm.
You know.
Well, look at that.
I kept switching the racks.
Going, yeah, moving them around.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, now we have our almonds and our sunflower seeds. So what is our next thing? We're going to add some lemon juice. Now, the reason why you want to soak in this recipe, definitely don't forget on this one, you need the moisture because you see I'm only putting a little lemon juice. It's the only liquid we're putting in this recipe. So you want, because I want this to be a pate. I want it to be like a spread. And so I don't want to put too much in there. All right, then I'm going to add some chopped celery. You know, when you have tuna salad, people put celery in it. So why not put the flavor of the celery in there? I'm also putting some onion in. And now let's get into the seasonings. I am putting in, I have parsley in the recipe and I put it in the wrong spot. Parsley goes on the side. We are going to actually add a little bit of salt. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about salt here in 1 second. And I'm also going to tell you about kelp powder. I'm using today something called kelp powder. It is a seasoning that comes from seaweed. It's dried and ground up, and it really gives you high iodine, which is very important for thyroid health. But why? Not only is the nutritional value good on this, it also has a great flavor. This is going to mimic a fishy flavor. So if you like tuna, this is going to have a hint of like fishiness that would make it like a tuna fish. So that is why I'm putting the kelp in there for that flavor. So I'm going to do this, and we're going to blend this up. Again, half recipe because I've already made one for you. And start on low. I move it up pretty quickly here. The nice thing about this blender, this is a Vitamix. It has this tamper, which is a handy dandy little tool. It pushes everything down to the blade without hitting the blade. And so I can just push everything down there and get it nice and smooth. What I like to do though is I like to stop in between though and just mix it up because I can't really see over in the black lid, so I kind of want to get all that. You don't want a nut in here like a almond whole. You'll like think it's a fish bone and you'll be like, you know, I don't want that, right? So we're going to mix that up. Get that in there. All right. So if you get one, it's an almond, okay? I promise you. All right. That should be good. So we'll take our bowl here. And now I had the parsley in the recipe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the parsley in at the end. If you put it in here, it's just going to turn everything green. But I like parsley in this recipe because it gives a pop of freshness. And herbs have something called phytochemicals in it. The phytochemicals in herbs are so powerful. And so it's nice to incorporate fresh herbs when you can. If you have a garden, grow fresh herbs because they really give you a lot of nutritional and medicinal. Like we know yesterday, we talked about herbal remedies. And so if you were there yesterday, you learned a little bit about that. Doesn't this look like tuna salad? Anybody? Kind of look like tuna salad? Okay. Sorta? Not exactly? All right. I did the best I could, Nathan. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it's not up to your standard.
He's a hard critic.
Thank you, Maddie, for not criticizing. No, she's not criticizing. He's just giving me his honest opinion. So, well, if it tastes good, that's all that matters, right? All right, thanks, Nathan. He did agree with me on that one. All right. All right, we're mixing that up here. It's a nice, like a pate. I like it like fine like this, like a spread. I'm just going to add my parsley in there. I chopped that up before. Just give it a little pop of green because it's kind of boring, but it'll also give us some nice freshness and a little bit of good phytochemicals. There we go. And we'll serve this on a cracker today, okay? But remember, you can serve it on anything you like at home. Easy, right? Have I done anything complicated? No, because I hate to tell you, but my middle name is simple. Because if it's not, listen, it's hard running a household, doing things, everybody's busy, whether you work, whether you're retired. You know, as soon as my husband and I left our full-time jobs, we are busier now than we were when we were working full-time, trying to juggle family and everything. We're busier now. So you can probably relate, most of you, about how, how life can get to us. So I try to make all the recipes simple. That's why I have a lot of 30-minute or less in my cookbook. All right, we'll put that there. Let me see what I talked about raw. So as grown, simply prepared, eating raw, unprocessed foods, vegetables, seeds, nuts, fruits, all that is going to give you your best nutrition. So I'd mentioned 50%. If you have an illness though, some people with cancer and stuff at the Lifestyle Center where I work, sometimes they put them on a 90% raw diet because you see most of the powerful nutrients that can have the healing properties are in raw foods. And so try to eat as much as you can in your salads, in your fresh vegetables, in your fruits, okay? Because that's going to help. All right, I told about the kelp. I talked about the nuts. I did not talk about something, though, that I promised you. I'm going to talk about salt. So, Ron, 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. Oh, Ron 2 is here. All right, so you can go ahead and take this goodies, and I'll put that there for you. And that there. Oop, there it goes. And I'll move this to our last recipe, but I want to talk about salt before we do our last recipe. So, salt. I particularly, in my cooking, one more. In my cooking, use Himalayan pink salt. Have you heard of Himalayan pink salt? You probably see it in the stores. Actually, if you have do you guys have a Costco near you? Oh, you kind of, if you can get to it, right? Costco sells Himalayan pink salt in a nice big container for like $6 something, right? It's really a very good deal for the Himalayan pink salt. So I use Himalayan pink salt primarily because of a few reasons. First of all, Himalayan pink salt is mined about 5,000 feet below sea level. So it's like 99.9999% pure, you know what I mean? It is, so I feel it has a good purity to it. The second reason why I use it is because it has 84 trace minerals in it. So trace minerals are minerals we need to get from outside sources like foods and things of that nature. Our body doesn't manufacture minerals. So trace minerals are the minerals that we need in very small quantities. So 84 trace minerals, you're getting a good powerful, punch of minerals there. So that is one of the things. Now, there are other benefits to Himalayan pink salt that I'll share with you, but other than culinary, okay? So, but that's why I use it. Now, hold your thought on iodine though, because I will tell you a little bit more about iodine. We used kelp powder, but I will talk to you a little bit about iodine in a minute. So the next category of salt is sea salt. There are two kinds of sea salt, if you didn't know that. There are the mined sea salts, such as Celtic sea salt. I was doing so good with my asthma, right? All right, Celtic sea salt or ocean water sea salt, right? Celtic sea salt, another one in the United States is called real salt, if you've ever seen that. It's kind of like a pink salt. Those are mined, and they have approximately 60 trace minerals in them. They are not mined as deep, so the purity level might not be as good, but they are still very good, okay? The third salt, though, is the ocean sea salt. The ocean sea salt is, they take sea salt and they dry the ocean water and it leaves the sediment of salt, and that's sea salt. Remember about 20 years ago or so, they started, people were like jumping on the bandwagon like, oh, sea salt's better. We should have sea salt, sea salt, sea salt, sea salt, right? Well, one of the problems that we face with regular sea salt is that there is a lot of ocean dumping. And when you dump something in the United States, it shows up in Thailand. I mean, the ocean just continually moves and, goes all around the world. Plastic does not completely disintegrate. There is something called microplastics. Microplastics are not only in the ocean, they're in our air. We breathe them in. Do you know that the average person eats approximately, or ingests, let's call it, because you could be breathing it in too, a credit card's worth of plastic a week? A week. Okay? So I don't use sea salt from the ocean that much because I find that I don't want to add to my credit card. You know what I mean? That's a lot of plastic. Okay? And think about it. It's not natural to our body. It's hard to expel out. So again, these are contributors to health. You know what I mean? Or poor health because of the fact that we're ingesting things that are not healthy for us. So I don't use regular sea salt very much. The last kind of salt that we have is table salt, right? How many trace minerals are in table salt? She got it. Goose egg. Absolutely none. Okay? What they do is they process salt so over-processed that it strips every mineral out of it. What they do is they try to make you feel good and give you a little iodine, right? We'll talk about that in a second. But let me see. Who can I pick on today? Elizabeth. Okay. I had to pick somebody. All right. I don't know if you realize this, but when you came into the room today, you had a $100 bill in your back pocket.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing. Now, the Holy Spirit is working on my heart, you see, because I'm on a missionary budget, right? Yeah. Okay. And I kind of borrowed without asking the $100. But I feel I need to share with her that I took the money, right? So I better tell. So you don't mind. I want to make it right with you. So you don't care if I give you like $10 back. Would that help you?
Since I didn't know I had it, that's fine.
Oh, well, you're very kind. But does that make it right?
No.
Okay. It does not make it right. That is what they're doing with your salt. They're stripping everything out, stealing the $100, and then they want to make you feel good, so they'll throw a little iodine in there, okay? They took out the iodine originally, and now they're trying to make you feel better with it. Now, I give this example because the processing in regular table salt, you guys get icy here because you were in like North Carolina. It can get cold here. It freezes every once in a while. You know what you should use your salt for? Your front step. Maybe scrubbing a pot if you need a little bit of gritty action, okay? But other than that, you don't want to use your salt in your food, table salt. Well, first of all, let's start with the process. They use, first of all, aluminum derivatives. I mentioned aluminum toxicity. So they use aluminum in your salt process, okay? So now you're getting aluminum. If you know anything about aluminum toxicity, aluminum as a heavy metal does not expel out of our body properly. It actually retains in our brain. People with Alzheimer's and dementia have high aluminum contents in their brain. Okay, when they do autopsies, they find that the aluminum is there. So we don't want aluminum if we don't have to use it, okay? They have it in our diet. The second thing, they use bleach. You know how beautiful white salt is? Who likes bleach in their food? Anybody? Nobody? Nobody likes bleach in their food. Okay, well, they use bleach. Then they use something. Now, does anybody remember that when you put salt in a salt shaker, you put rice in there? Anybody do that? Anybody do it still? You don't need to. Why do you do it?
Keep the moisture out of it.
Well, you don't need to because they use something called yellow prussiate of soda. Yellow prussiate of soda is an anti-clumping agent. If you take the rice out, your salt is still going to shake out of there. So you don't have to waste the rice. Don't waste the rice, right? However, the problem with yellow prussiate of soda, it is a known carcinogen. So now you're getting bleach, aluminum, and a cancer-causing agent in your salt. And no minerals, only iodine that they actually synthetically put back in. So anyway, so table salt, I would just get rid of. I would buy a better quality salt. Now I'll go back to why I want to talk about iodine. So iodine is detrimental to our health. We need iodine, especially for our thyroid. But Himalayan pink salt does not have a significant amount of iodine, neither do the Celtic salts or the other sea salts. What I do is I buy a good quality iodized sea salt, such as Hain, H-A-I-N. You can buy that in Walmart. Other places, health food stores have Hain, H-A-I-N. I take a 1/4 cup of the iodized sea salt to 3/4 of a cup of my Himalayan pink, and I mix it together. So I'm getting the iodine, and Ron and I are not iodine deficient, so it must be working. But that's just the ratio that I use. About a 1/4 cup of an iodized sea salt with 3/4 of a cup of Himalayan pink. Put it together, and that's what I got. So anyway, so that's how the salt is.
Got that at Walmart.
I get it at Walmart. I've seen it at Hain, H-A-I-N, yes. That's the iodized sea salt. So anyway, that's what I use, and it seems to work. I don't have a goiter, right? My throat's okay? Okay, good. All right. Well, we're on our last and final recipe. Oh, our time is almost over. But you'll be happy because the food is coming, right?
This Hain iodized sea salt.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Well, this is what I say. I'm using minimal of it compared to what I'm using in the salt. Okay? So again, it is somewhat of a little bit of a compromise, but I would rather, the iodine is so important that the compromise, sometimes you have to weigh what's the better option, even if they're not both, both aren't the best option, right? So I do that, that's how I justify it that way. So you kind of have to look at the pros and cons and weigh which one would be the better option. The iodine to me is more important.
You can also get the iodine in
Kelp?
the kelp.
Yeah.
And then also dulse. We use dulse.
Yeah, which is similar to, it's a,
Similar to kelp.
yeah.
And I think what is that? It's seaweed.
It's a seaweed. The problem is that you have to like seaweed and you'd have to use it in a lot of recipes to get a significant amount. So that's the problem. You can incorporate it. We incorporate it in, but we actually add it to our salt as well.
We use it as pepper
Oh,
on our food.
see? Well, they got used to it though, and that's what you enjoy now.
Sprinkle it on your food.
Yeah.
Dulse.
Dulce, D-U-L-C.
The grocery store too.
Not health food store.
Health food.
Health food store is going to have it.
Or I shop at Amazon or Vita Cost
Yeah, sometimes of those, yeah. All right, we are on our last and final recipe.
What
That
about the Canaan thing? That calls for,
the what?
would you use iodine salt? What kind of salt would you use?
What?
Canning.
Canning. Oh, you know what? They usually use canning salt. You have to use canning salt.
I usually just get plain salt.
You can buy canning salt. You can buy canning salt. If you use plain salt, listen, if that's what you're using, if that only for the canning, but for your table and food and stuff like that, sometimes you just have to make, make the adjustment in certain. What? Canning salt. No, canning salt doesn't. That's why when I do canning, I buy specific canning salt. So yeah, you don't. So, but you're only canning with it. You use salt in other recipes and food when you're cooking and things like that. You're salting food. So you want to make sure that you want to make sure you're getting a good source of iodine. So I would suggest when you're using regular food salt for food and seasoning, but when you're canning, you have to use the canning salt or the regular salt. Yeah, so don't worry about that. You won't be able to can it because it will have a reaction. So yeah, so you're fine. But when you're using salt at home for seasoning your food, regular, like when you're cooking, I would try to use a better salt. You know what I mean? Just because then you'll get the iodine. Make sure it's iodized. Okay?
At Marshall's, they have lots of.
They do, the fancy ones.
Yeah, they have sea salt there. Is that okay?
Probably, the more artisan it is, usually the better quality it is usually. So yeah, you should be okay. So I'm just giving you the little tips for what works for me. But you have to do what works for you too, right? And if you do a lot of canning, you're not going to use an iodized salt anyway. But I would suggest when you're cooking and you're, for your family or making your meals, to get an iodized salt or use something with iodine in it, okay?
And your table salt, use it with iodine in it?
Well, the table salt, the reason why I don't use table salt is because it doesn't have any minerals in it. I usually use Himalayan pink salt, and I add a little bit of that iodized salt to it to make it. Yeah, some people say that as well. So, but use whatever salt you want to use. I'm just giving you what I use, right? How's that? All right, last but not least, we are going to make candy. Now, this is interesting. I have an empty, I don't know if I put this on here and then didn't fill it or I'm missing something. We'll find out in a minute. I am going to make a carob candy cluster, but I'm actually going to make it like a bark because it's easy, and then we can put it in the freezer and crack it up and have pieces, right? I'm going to start with some peanut butter. Now, if you want to, you can use any nut butter you want in this. In my cookbook, not only do I have this recipe, but I have a almond bark that I use, and I use either a cashew butter or an almond butter with it instead of peanut butter. And I add a little peppermint in it, and I put some almonds and some cranberries or some like cherries, dried cherries, and I make it for the holidays, and I give them out as gifts. So don't be surprised if some of you get, no, I'm kidding. Some of you get this one year. All right, and I'm gonna use something, these look like chocolate chips, but they are not chocolate chips. They are carob chips. Has anybody here not heard of carob, C-A-R-O-B? Carob, right? If you have, has anybody never had carob before? Never tried it? All right, good. Well, we're going to try it today because I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm not using chocolate here. First of all, chocolate actually is refined, okay? So they take the cocoa beans and they go through a big process and they refine it, right? Not only does it have a lot of sugar in it, okay? These carob chips, although these are sweetened, there's different kinds of carob chips you can buy. You can buy sweetened, unsweetened, and one that's called barley malt sweetened, which is sweetened with more of a natural sweetener. But regular chocolate chips are high in sugar. These have more than a third less sugar than a regular one. Now, I'm using the sweetened ones. The reason why is because they melt much easier. And when I'm doing a cooking school, I realize that I'm talking. If I'm not paying attention, I'll be burning this. So I like to use the regular one. So regular chocolate, milk chocolate has dairy in it. We talked about dairy, right? I forgot to tell you another thing about dairy. One of the other problems with dairy is that there's a cancer-causing agent in dairy products called casein. Casein causes cancer, and casein is in the milk products. And so just so you know, so we don't want to ingest as much dairy as, remember, God didn't make us to drink dairy as adults, right? And then there's two things in chocolate too that we should stay away from. One is called caffeine. We talked about the false stimulation to your nervous system, and theobromine. Theobromine works on the nervous system like caffeine. It's false stimulation, but it does not give you the body the nutrition it's looking for, so your body crashes. So chocolate, has all these things in them. Now, I got to tell you a funny story. Oh, I told it the other day, I think. Did I tell you a story about caffeine? All right. Yes, I did. I think I told you. Well, listen, it's about my sister. No? Okay. All right. It was Friday night. You weren't there. All right. I think I told you this, but I'll tell this for those who didn't hear the story. So when I was growing up, my dad was teaching us about temperance, and saying how you could stay away from things that are bad for you, and also be moderate in things that are good for you. That's really the definition of being temperate, right? So he says, Carin, things that end in "ine" are bad for you. I'm like, okay. He goes, caffeine. Okay, caffeine is the most widely abused drug in the world. Just so you know, it is a drug. Okay, caffeine. So I'm like, okay, caffeine. He's like, nicotine. Well, smoking, we know now, of course, smoking is not good for us. It's cancer causing stuff. So he said, so caffeine is not good for you. Nicotine's not good for you. He said, drugs, morphine. Now, morphine, of course, is medicinal, given medically, but some people get addicted to drugs like morphine, right? So he says, morphine. I'm like, okay, I'm buying it, right? Caffeine, nicotine, morphine. And then he said, and Christine. My sister's name is Christine. He said, everything that ends in "ine" is bad for you. So we laughed. She got mad. But it was funny, and I still use it today as part of my when I talk about caffeine, I always make me trigger about caffeine, morphine, nicotine, and Christine. Stay away from these things, he told me. Anyway, he had such a good sense of humor, my dad. All right, so we want to stay away from chocolate. Chocolate is also very addictive, too. But what is carob? Well, carob comes from a very evergreen flowering plant that's really native to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Okay, so it actually has a different name. Now, I like to remember, you've noticed that I like to filter in, like on the biblical sense, a lot of, of being my Christian background. So it's funny because the other name for carob is the locust bean. Now, if remember when I talked about honey, I talked about John the Baptist really quick, and I said he ate in the wilderness locust and wild honey. Many people think that John the Baptist ate locust bugs, okay? We have evidence that John the Baptist was a vegetarian, okay? So John the Baptist was a vegetarian. He is not eating bugs, right? He's not eating bugs and honey. That's kind of weird and gross, right? So he was eating the locust bean, locust and wild honey, carob and honey. Carob, like chocolate, honey, sweet, put it together, you have candy. John the Baptist had a sweet tooth. That's all I can say about that, right? And like how you have all these questions, like you think about, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask the Lord this, and I'm going to ask God that. Well, when I run into John the Baptist, I'm going to like, you have a little sweet tooth, don't you? I have to, because really, put carob in, right? But the reason why did John the Baptist sustain on locust and wild honey? Not just protein. It is a complete food, basically. It is so nutritionally dense with magnesium, calcium. I mean, we'll go on and on and on with so many vitamins and minerals and protein. If you were on a deserted island, if somebody said that we're going to drop one thing, well, if you can try to get the honey from the bees on the wing, but get carob, okay? Because it is, you can survive on carob. High fiber. It also, carob, and you would know this too because she is an expert in diabetes. Carob lowers your blood sugar as well. And so, with that being said, they take the dry pod of the carob and they grind it up and they have this carob powder, and that's all. It's really, that's the basic thing. So, but carob actually has gallic acid in it, which is a tannin. It works basically almost like an analgesic in some respect too. It improves digestion, lowers cholesterol. It's used in treating diarrhea and the prevention of lung cancer, as well as diabetes management. So here's some of the vitamins and minerals. I'll read them. Calcium, zinc, potassium, phosphorus, vitamin K, riboflavin, vitamin E, and it's a natural antioxidant. So it is good for what ails you. So we are going to use carob instead of chocolate. And I promise you, I think you're going to really like this candy. So I'm going to start this because I wanted not to burn anything here. I will make a confession. I had to send Ron all the way back to where we're staying to get more carob chips because this stove here is crazy. And I burned the first batch of the candy and I didn't, but you want to know how God works? You know, carob chips, for some reason, since COVID, have been hard to come by in the health food store that I shop at. And so when I saw them there, I said, oh, I'm going to buy some for myself. And I brought them with me. I threw them in my freezer in case I was going to make something. I had them there. Do you know, thank goodness I did, because I burned the carob. Oh, listen, it doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't taste as good as it could. It actually tasted like a nutty, roasty flavor. I ate it and I'm like, okay, I could eat this, but it's not my best product. Therefore, I said, I made Ron go all the way back. So I was like scared I was going to run out of time before all of you got here. But by God's grace, he's so good to me. We made it. All right. All I'm doing now is I took the peanut butter and the carob chips, and you see I'm just melting them. Can you see that? Okay, I'm just getting them nice and melty. I put the peanut butter in first on the bottom because it has a lot of oil in it, peanut butter, and so it won't burn the chips, except if you're at the Civic Center, just so you know. Because I did not have it on high. So I had it on medium. But I'm going to go here a little medium less here, just because now I've got like anxiety about the thing. Now I call this Carin's carob chocolatey, Carin's chocolatey carob candy clusters. Did I say that on there? Chunky. Chunky candy. I started going with the C and I never stopped, really is what it was. And I just kept on finding adjectives. But the reason why it's chunky, do you remember the chunky bar? We're doing a chunky bar. We're adding peanuts and we're adding raisins. I'm sorry, Darcy. Darcy's allergic to raisins. So I'm adding that in and mixing it up. Okay, we're done here. That's how fast this is. We're done. I'm done making my candy. You know how like chocolate, you have to temper it, and you have to use like a, certain temperature, but here we go. So what am I doing? Well, I'm making this easy. Now, I'm putting this right on a silicone thing. You can use some parchment paper if you'd like. You see, I made it here and I didn't burn a thing. It's that stove in there. Not a good stove. Be careful of that stove, because it is dangerous. All right. And I'm just going to spread this out. Now, this is the easy way. This is called Carin's lazy way because it'll really, it'll harden up nice in the freezer very quickly. And then I just break it into pieces and done. That's how easy this is. So I am going to. Well, it's funny because, it depends. Most of the time they'll have like the chocolate, like fair trade, and what they're trying to do is making sure that they're not exploiting people and and all this, but again, I would stay away from chocolate because carob has tons of antioxidants in it too, and one of the reasons why they promote chocolate is because they say, oh, it has antioxidants and it's really good for you, but carob is so much better for you that if you have their choice, and this is nutritionally great, where chocolate is just tasty and it's got a couple things in it like the antioxidants. This is so much better. Is that a better choice than a Hershey bar? Yes. So if you're going to choose one, go ahead and buy the one at the health food store, by all means. But the same as, but if I was going to tell you what the better choice is, it would be this. All right. You can buy carob powder. Like cocoa powder you use in the dessert. You can buy carob powder. I'm using the chips today, but carob powder is basically just the pod ground up and like chocolate. So yeah, you could use it. But again, if you're gonna go with the like a darker chocolate because they don't have the dairy products in that and things of that nature. If you're doing that, yes. It depends on what you're making. In my cookbook I use carob powder in a. I have in there a mousse. I do like a Nutella mousse. I do a hazelnut mousse in here. Let me see what I used. Who knew? It's the third recipe, right after Carin's chocolatey blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right, what did I use? Dates. I used pitted dates, more softened in warm water. I couldn't remember because I haven't made that in so long. True, that's true. And some are more chocolatey. It depends. The Australian carob is very, very good. All right, so I like to fancy this up a little bit too. version of a chunky bar. It's funny because we never really ate chocolate in the house, so it's not like I even knew, like, really how good, like a chunky bar, if that was good or not. But for me, when I was putting this together and I had saw a similar recipe that somebody had made, I'm like, I think I want to put other stuff in there and make this like a chunky. All right, we are done. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, you want my microphone? Doesn't matter. Okay, well, I'm done. I'm done anyway. Okay. Well, it's in my pocket. Can you hear me out there? Not you. Anyway, we're gonna thank you. You could bring that in and just have them stick that in the freezer. Does anybody have any questions about anything we talked about? Remember anything about my age? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any substitute for nutritional yeast?
Do you have a sensitivity to nutritional use? Let's talk later.
Okay.
Because I'll straighten you out. How's that? I'll straighten, because I've done exhaustive research on nutritional yeast. Because I heard that too, and I was perplexed. And so I really went to a lot of sources, and I'll give you what I know about it. How's that? And you can make your own decision. But I use it. I don't use it like every day, but in things that I want a cheesy flavor or something like that flavor, I do use it. Any other questions? No? Well, without further ado, why don't we have a word of prayer so that we can ask the Lord to bless the food, and then I'm sure the samples will be coming out shortly. And if you do have any questions, you're welcome to come up. Please come up and visit the table. Sheila will be around. Sheila?
She's in the kitchen.
Sheila? Well, Sheila will be around so she can talk to you a little bit about the natural remedies, if you have any interest in those. And then, of course, if you have any interest in the books, I will be here as well. And if you do want a cookbook, I'd be happy to sign one for you. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you again, Lord, for our time together. And we ask you, Lord, to bless the food that you've provided. Let it be nourishing. Let it be strengthening. Lord, and let us always hear you to do your will. In Jesus' name.